Trish Gleason, Assistant City Clerk, you are hereby directed to call a special session of the City Council to be held on Monday, April 8th, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. in the historic Federal Building for the purpose of conducting such business that may properly come before the City Council.
Good evening and welcome to a special session of the Dubuque City Council for April 8th, 2024. As a reminder to our participants, you can provide in-person input or virtual audio or written input during tonight's public hearing. Input options during the live meeting include in-person attendees may approach the podium when the mayor asks if there's any public input for the public hearing they would like to speak to. Remote attendees can log into GoToMeeting using the login links, phone numbers, and access code that appears on the broadcast and live stream and posted on the front page of the meeting agenda. This option includes audio input and written chat input. If you are participating via computer, indicate what public hearing you would like to speak to in the chat function and note that you would like to speak during the appropriate section. If you are participating via phone, indicate which public hearing you would like to speak to during the appropriate section. All comments, whether in person or virtual, must be accompanied by a name and address. Additionally, written public input is accepted by contacting the City Council directly from the city's webpage at www.cityofdubuque.org/council contacts and through the city clerk's office email at ctyclerk@cityofdubuque.org. This information may be reiterated during the meeting. Attendance at tonight's meeting is as follows. Mayor Kavanaugh.
Here.
Council members Farber.
Here.
Jones.
Here.
Resnick.
Here.
Roussel.
Here.
Sprank.
Here.
Wethel.
Here.
City Manager Van Milligan.
Here.
Tonight we're going to begin with the action item. Action item number 1 is to reschedule work session, city prevention and response to an active aggressor situation.
Mr. Mayor. Ms. Roussel.
I move to receive and file and set the work session for Monday, June 3rd at 5:15 p.m.
Second by Sprank.
Got a motion by Roussel and a second by Jones. Trish, would you call the roll, please?
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Farber.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Roussel.
Aye.
Sprank.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
That motion passes 7-0.
Next, we have our public hearings for certain fiscal year 2025 department budgets. Mayor Kavanaugh, I'll turn it over to you to kick us off.
All right, thank you very much, Trish. Well, we are entering our final week of budget season, so here we are, excited to be here once again. Love hanging out with you as much as I hang out with my family. You guys are great. So we're going to move on to our first public hearing of the night, which is information technology. So I'll welcome Chris Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. It's great to be here again to share what's happening in information technology through the past year. To get started with, I'd like to introduce one staff member that's here, Scott Schlichty. Scott, with you, stand up or wave, or Scott is our lead application network analyst and has worked more hours than you can imagine on implementation of the ERP system for the financial side of it, as well as the time and attendance. So I'm very grateful to have Scott here tonight. The mission statement of information technology hasn't changed. However, I think as you go through the other budget hearings that you've been attending for the past weeks, you can kind of see that what we do and the mission that we have doesn't change. However, how we apply that gets broader and it gets more encompassing. And so we still see that our goal is enhancing and supporting that high-performance government through the application of technology with resilient and reliable infrastructure and that demonstration of our quality services to our users. That remains key in really how we do our work as well as what we do. We have new names and new faces this year. So you might have noticed we are not information services anymore. So hopefully we won't get the phone calls that say, when will my garbage be picked up on the holiday? And I have a problem with a raccoon in my backyard. Those are actual calls that we have received, and I think we sent them to the right place. But we are information technology. But I'm happy to report we are at full staff. After many years of working to recruit for these positions, we have added, most recently, the law enforcement intern is a forensic intern. We had a gentleman come to us that was studying forensics at the University of Dubuque, and at the same time, we had a need in the police department and the sheriff's department and CID to have someone in that capacity that can help with transferring those files and learning to do that analysis under the guidance of IT as well as law enforcement staff. We have two help desk ERP, one help desk ERP position and a help desk position we've filled in this year, as well as hired a senior network administrator when our current senior network administrator, Joe Pregler, became our chief security officer. So that position was hired. And we have gotten some administrative support from Elizabeth Martin from the Office of Shared Prosperity to help with kind of the day-to-day things, the payroll and the P cards and those type of things. And this then is our current organizational chart. I have a new title as well, so I am now the Chief Information Officer, or CIO. Aligns a little bit better with what industry has for the kinds of things that I do. We are at 13 full-time equivalents, and as you can see, we have grown and have grown in some very key critical areas that we have needed assistance for. And I think, speaking along those lines, we used to be much like, in the spirit of basketball, everybody went for the same ball, or everybody in volleyball, maybe it's a little easier analogy, everybody's going for the same ball. And that made for, 6 folks working simultaneously on enterprise applications and help desk kinds of things, and a couple of folks in public safety, and we're backing up as well as network admin and cybersecurity. We've now intentionally taken that organizational chart there and grouped it into these functional areas of network administration along with the cybersecurity folks. This is where you see a lot of the work with the switches and the phone system and the fiber optics and any of the cybersecurity things that we do. Public safety is not only the Dubuque Law Enforcement Center, but it also expands to fire as well as assisting with the Emergency Operations Center kinds of technology. And so that group takes care of that. And then enterprise applications, which is the ERP system support, it is the help desk support, it is the installs for all the PCs, the mobile devices, those kinds of things. So again, as we grow in terms of users and applications that you've probably heard about at every budget hearing of some technology that folks are doing, this is kind of how that all divides up in terms of our support. In terms of how IT works in the work we do in the city towards creating an equitable community of choice, a lot of what we do are in support of those departments or in support of the data-driven aspect of trying to pull data out for things like analyzing fees and fines or working with particular departments on how they might approach transparency with their data. However, we also are directly involved in terms of initiatives around digital equity. In terms of looking at our digital equity program in the city, we see it as a three-legged stool around broadband, which says broadband needs to be available, it needs to be affordable, and it needs to be accessible. And in terms of accessible, it means I need to be able to have the capacity and the ability to pay for to do the things that I want to do, whether that be work from home, whether that be telehealth, whether that be any number of the kinds of things even for social cultural interaction or my banking. So one of the programs that happened during COVID was the Affordable Connectivity Program, or known as the acronym ACP. And this program has benefited now almost 2,000 households in the city of Dubuque in fiscal year 24. And we've created a website that front ends the application process. And really, when you look at the program, it gave $30 per month per household and took that aggregately, that looks about $660,000 in savings that people have then to spend on other things if they had this particular benefit. But the sad part is that it has run out of funding. And so the program, and I think you may have had some information already shared in this, but this is an opportunity to talk about that the program will stop providing the full discounts in April of 2024. They started notifying customers in February, and this program is under the FCC, so this was part of the rules of the FCC, and all discounts will end in May of 2024. There were numerous attempts to try to get this in appropriation and funding bills. It hasn't made them yet. However, there are two very active bills in both the Senate and the House. Both are currently in appropriations. And again, both have bipartisan support on both bills. With the House bill having 221 co-sponsors, there are three in addition to the main sponsor in the Senate. And so our hope is that next steps on the Affordable Connectivity Program will work within these bills and work within the funding mechanisms to fully fund this, but there most likely will be a gap in the funding because of what's happening at the federal level. I think there's also been some ask about a program called Lifeline, which has been around for a long time. It was designed originally for assisting with monthly telephone services. It's similar in that it is a benefit towards phone, and then internet has been added over the years. I think the main differences in the two are a different criteria for guidelines on income between ACP and the Lifeline program. Numbers of providers are smaller in terms of Lifeline, but even though there's broader participation on the ACP side, there is more paperwork and some more work that folks have to do on that. And then the benefits are larger on the ACP. So again, the things that are going to probably change on ACP, and I don't have a crystal ball on this, will probably not change in terms of purpose and scope or benefit, but that eligibility criteria and providers may, there may be some change. But really, this is one of those things, the providers are actually behind it because they're losing customers potentially when they lose the benefit. So now back to IT. Our broadband partnerships continue. This is an intentional group that meets biweekly. Our telecommunications group, it's a partnership with Greater Dubuque Development Corporation, and David Lyons has been our fantastic facilitator for the past year, since 2016. I think this group's been going. And it's also a partnership with the engineering department, where you'll hear a lot more about fiber optics and conduit, our department, IT, water department with some of the things they're doing with SCADA, and the legal department. So we're currently at about 65 agreements with 18 providers and partners. So when you think starting in 2016, we had 2, and we've grown to 18 partners, which aren't all ISPs or internet services providers, but there is a great deal of partnership in terms of putting broadband and fiber in the ground. So it does give us a great leverageable investment in those partnerships, as well as leading to fiber to the home. So I've shown you this map, I think, in previous budget presentations. This is the IMON budget or IMON map, rather, for fiber to the home. This year will be portions to the north in red, and then some of the portions in gold that would be more in the city limits of Dubuque. So and the data on how that build has looked. We started in 2022. These are the growth in the number of addresses that have been served, as well as what they call cabinets, or really, if you substitute the word cabinet for substitute neighborhood for cabinet, that's really what it means. This is the hub that serves that particular neighborhood. So they actually will be finishing their work in 2024 on what they call their REAIM project. That was their original funding. Then we'll come back around in 2025 and take care of some of the remaining spots through different budgeting. But in all total, in 2023, they put in over 200,000 feet of lineal fiber, and with us and with new fiber, over 307,000 feet of lineal fiber. Some other items that IT has been actively involved with the hiring of the chief security officer, lots of work on cybersecurity prevention and awareness. We've implemented some phishing exercises that we've done, and I think we're at about 2% of response on those of the samples that we send out. We'd like to get that under 1%. But we're well under the 5% that typically happen on those kinds of testing. Again, hiring in full staff has been a great highlight, and then working on implementing the backup and replication system that we did last year, as well as some things on security audits, data center, and implementation of our co-location and disaster recovery servers and storage. So we're moving, hopefully, in this calendar year. So a bit of an update on our IT office move and data center update to 7900 Chavanel. This is a graphic of both our office area as well as a footprint of our data center and some of the shared spaces. We have entered into the agreement with Dubuque Initiatives and with their parent organization for the lease of the space, and we did that in January. We also bid the process in January of 2024. Recommendations are in progress for both data center and for office move-in. So we are planning our move for the data center in July of 2024, and the office move-in is projected for probably fall of 2024. Those are pretty conservative, but I'd rather give you a conservative estimate than give you something that says we're moving tomorrow, and a lot of that will depend on supply chain. And we will be moving servers from 1300 Main out to there. We had at first thought we were going to do an in-place build, but timing said we'll put them in place and put the replication in place before we move. Again, lots of work on the application side of the house with the ERP system, particularly finance and budget, UB, time and attendance payroll. Office 365, we now have email for all staff, along with the time and attendance. We continue on an active replacement cycle of hardware for PCs and mobile devices. We have kind of honed in on what work from home and hybrid work looks like with some configurations for that. We're actively, using our support ticketing system, and again, extension of the fiber with the broadband public-private partnerships, 2 sites using the ARPA funding as well for some additional sites, again, like SCADA, some additional camera sites, and some of the partnership work that we're doing with IMON. Some future initiatives, again, continuing that public-private partnerships, ongoing application support for the ERP system, as well as next modules. One of the biggest projects we'll probably work on next year in terms of applications is the public safety software replacement. That would be a comprehensive public safety software implementation that they'll be doing over the next year. We'll be involved in the 911 center move. Artificial intelligence is definitely on the radar with policy education and some pilots. We'll be replacing our customer response management system. We finally call that GovQA or WebQA. That will be replaced in the next year. And again, just all the ongoing things that happen with network, cybersecurity, and disaster recovery testing and implementation once we have the data center fully set up. Our net property tax support request for the department budget is a little over 1.8 million, and this is an cost to the average homeowner of $27.28. In terms of recommended improvement requests, we have two that are in the budget. First is for addition of some ergonomic furniture at 7900 Chavanel. These would be some things like stand-up desks, new chairs, that type of thing. Second improvement request are the radio replacements. We have two radios that need to be upgraded to the latest frequency and versions, and so that will be also done and is a required update. In terms of capital improvement projects, as I talked about, we have the citywide computer and printer replacements happening on a regular schedule basis, and that projected cost in 2025 is a little over $407,000. And then a required network switch upgrade to get us two versions that are supported and have the sufficient capacity is another CIP that's approved for $121,000. In terms of our performance measures, we typically do our measurements in terms of, the updates that we do. Our uptime is measured. Sometimes you'll hear it referred to as 4 nines, but we are at 99.99% uptime. And then being able to scale the growth of our storage, training hours that we provide by staff to city staff, as well as important statistics on how much we block with the software that we have on total inbound intrusions as well as viruses that are blocked. So that's a multi-layered system that we have that blocks those. And so, and I think we're very diligent in terms of making sure that for the things that we can control, I can't control when someone clicks on a box in response and gives them the keys to the kingdom and their email and their login and password, but I can prevent intentional phishing attempts and things that come in like that. So with that, thank you very much, and I'd open it if you have any questions.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you very much, Chris. Before I open for public hearing, Eric, if you wouldn't mind, please hitting the screen so we can see the internal feed. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Okay, we are in a public hearing to discuss the information technology fiscal year 25 budget. Do we have any public input on that? I don't see anyone here today. Do we have any public input virtually? Thank you. Anything from the city clerk's office? Okay, then back to the table for questions and discussion. Ms. Farber.
Yes,
Coming to you first.
Thank you very much. So congratulations on the full staff. And I greatly appreciate seeing the functional areas that you have created so that people know where to go in terms of the workflow. And also if there's questions or concerns or anything legislatively, we know now which group to go to. So I think that is really a great enhancement. And congratulations on basically establishing and expanding the workload accordingly. Now, one of my subjects that I'm involved with, as you can appreciate, is going to be the Affordable Care Act. And I just was wondering, the Lifeline, if that is an intermediate or a gap filler, how are the residents able to know about this? And is it really, do you see activity at this point based on the feedback from the ISPs and the letters that have been sent by the providers?
So far, and it's a really good question. So far, what I have heard from both ISPs as well as the company that does our front-end website also has a presence in Washington that they lobby heavily on behalf of programs like the ACP. Mm-hmm. And right now, they're in what I would call a holding pattern with the goal of making movement on the program for the ACP and having a very small gap. The Lifeline program, if that doesn't happen, will be an alternative. And what I've seen, particularly in other cities, is taking websites like what we have for the ACP and putting information on there as well as guidance of Lifeline. The challenge I think a lot of people will have is that when you look at 200% of poverty income to 135%, that's a big jump. So there's going to be people that aren't going to qualify for Lifeline. You're also going to see there's a different set of programs that, right now, if you had free and reduced lunches, you were on Medicaid. If you were on Medicare, if you had, not Medicare, but Medicaid, and you had any number of types of benefits that people get from the federal government, you qualified for ACP. It's very specific on what you have for Lifeline, and it's only $9.25 a month versus $30 a month. I don't think I've ever seen an internet program for $9.25. So in the meantime, I think in addition to the advocacy in DC that we have in place already, it's support coming from local governments like ourselves to say this is really important. We're 660,000. There's well over, I think, was it 21 million?
It's 23 million.
23 million all over the U.S. that are involved in this program. So it's not something that no matter what letter is behind your name, you'll take lightly that it needs to be replaced. So again, do I think Lifeline could be? It could be. If we're close enough to doing something else, I'm not sure it's going to be, I don't want to say worth the effort, but it is going to be effort to work with folks if this is going to happen quickly. But if it doesn't happen quickly, then I think there's a lot more hands-on activity with ISPs, which we already, I think, are doing in terms of encouraging them to hold people on that discount per month.
Right, because my question is, these ISPs get reinforced by the federal government, right? So they're incented
Absolutely.
to offer this rate.
Yes.
And the challenge is going to be, because my understanding is that chances are it's not going to get extended at this point in time, just by the feedback from the National League of Cities and et cetera. And therefore, that gap is going to be a little large.
Yeah.
And so my concern is just the communication that we send out to the community
Sure.
On a use base, and how we get that out so people are not sitting there thinking, okay, I don't have internet anymore, I can't use it in my house, my students can't use it for school, et cetera, et cetera. So that's my concern, and hopefully we will keep on top of that so that doesn't occur.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
And like I said, the benefit for us is we have a website in place that could easily be adapted to front-end people into a Lifeline program or make it a both and. Once ACP hopefully comes back to us in a future funding bill, then to do that. So a lot to tune in on and a lot to, it's one of those things, it's kind of like who do you talk to that day will give you their slant on it. And, we try to key into places like the National League of Cities to get that heartbeat.
Okay, well, we'll look forward to communicating and to working together. I just wanted to congratulate you on your highlights and all the work that you're doing, and very much I think we look forward to the relocation of the center and the switches so that we have basically a new location for you to work and to be happy with, if you will. And the fact that you're doing so many broad brush things is very encouraging. And I did want to ask one question. You had asked about a desktop software application that I think kind of puts and melds in everything that's going on within the city's infrastructure now that you're managing. Could you explain a little bit more about that software, so perhaps that's something we think about going forward
Sure.
in the next cycle?
Absolutely. Our lead application network analyst, Scott Schlichty, brought some analysis to us under his umbrella of the Enterprise Applications Group that we have lots of software that does monitoring for different things. I always say I get more email from stuff than I'll ever get from people. And, but each of those pieces of software comes with a specific purpose and a licensing for it. Scott located some software alternatives that combined it under one umbrella. And so the net between what we're paying now and what the new software would be, it would net out to be about $5,000. Now, granted, it's still a $21,000 recurring expense, but it's $5,000 less a year than we would have normally paid with all of those different softwares. Plus, it puts everything on one dashboard that we can utilize and easily see what's happening on different areas of network usage or user activity or bandwidth or all of those kinds of things that we normally, or things that are down that we normally would look to monitor and alert on.
So it's kind of like a point of sale, if you will, for everything that's going on. So maybe after the relocation is completed and the center is operational, maybe that would be a good time to have that
revisit.
discussion again about it, because I think you kind of have to be there and see it on your screens and see it on the operation inside. But I think it's a great thing to have. It's a nice software bundle, as we call it. And perhaps that should be something to be considered more strongly once you get settled and situated there. But thank you. I'm very excited to see what goes on and to come out and see you on Chavanel Road.
Perfect.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, Mr. Resnick.
Thank you. So much going on in your department. And maybe you could, well, the numbers that we have here, maybe you could talk to the citizens a little bit about, in 2 years, your budget's up 60%. Now, that's a lot, and you're doing a lot buying new equipment, and then the year before, you had a 40% raise in employee expenses, those kind of things. So could you tell us really about the qualitative difference that the citizens are getting with this investment?
Sure. I think that from a resident's perspective, one of the first things that we say we do in IT is we are a steward of all the data that we have, whether that be their billing data, their financial data, any of the payroll data. So everything that we do is data-driven in terms of that. So when we talk about servers, we talk about bandwidth to get things from here to there, massive databases like our geographic information system, or some of the things that we do for law enforcement, massive kinds of applications that the CAD, the computer-aided dispatch alone, has 7 different interfaces. So keeps the data safe in case, like the law enforcement center, it keeps people safe. And so we're very concerned with public safety being its own entity and making sure that all of that stays as safe as possible and is not intruded, and it's highly available. So we've created that highly available, resilient network, always on, always available, always has an opportunity to back up. So when residents go, well, yeah, IT, you just play with computers, it really isn't that. There's a very strong infrastructure that stands behind the kinds of things that we're trying to do. Some of the other things, we've added staff because of the enterprise resource system. That's really where the brunt of our additional staffing came, in terms of taking some fairly straightforward, simple financial, and I know Jenny wouldn't say it's simple, but straightforward, siloed financial, budget, payroll, very scaled down to what we have now that has a very robust integration, very robust way of each system kind of communicating with each other, as well as in systems like time and attendance. It necessitated every single employee to have an email address, which necessitated everyone to have a license for that. So when I go from having about 500 and such users to almost 1,000 users, you know, because not everyone had an account, and that seems odd in 2024, but that was how we were wired. So you see that additional licensing. And we do have a decent replacement cycle. You know, we don't wait till things die. We are very proactive in terms of things like 4-year replacement cycles on PCs, that then when you look at the statistics and the analysis, really after about 4 years, you're going to see a pretty high spike on what it takes to take care of those PCs. But again, it's depth and breadth that we've expanded in. Just to sum it up, I think to the resident, even though you don't directly see it, I think you do experience it because you've got a highly available and responsive government, particularly in areas like public safety. So hopefully that answered your question, Mr. Resnick, but, you know.
Absolutely, and thank you for that. And so after this move, do you anticipate a slowing of the growth, or because we're spending money for equipment, to make it right.
I smiled on slowing of the growth. We will never have a slowing of the growth of applications because we're never done. There's always one more module. I think that, my staff will probably kill me when I say this. I think there'll be a little bit of leveling off that we might see, although there's always going to be, particularly when you think about something like artificial intelligence. I mean, that is going to probably impact organizations and government more dramatically than any technology that we have seen in the past. I've been doing this for 41 years, and so that's going to be my, another one of my big points, very similar to when we went from mainframes to PCs and, and when we went from single servers to virtualized servers. This is going to be something that's that exponentially impacting.
So you wouldn't be surprised in 2 years if your budget's up another 60%?
60%, don't know. I guess maybe that's a case I'd need AI to figure that one out, but, and I say that in jest, but it's hard to have a crystal ball to say in 60% in 2 years. I would say there's going to be growth, though. And what that translates to, if we can figure out how to do things more efficiently in terms of cost by using technologies like AI, that may be part of it. But technology has a replacement cost and a maintenance cost, and it's hard to get around that.
Right,
So,
well, and you're doing a lot of the backbone
We
of
are.
the organization,
we are.
behind everybody,
Yes.
So I understand that.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to bring that up to people, to let them know a lot's going into that. That's what it's for. And
Yes.
as you mentioned, you let them know that it is ever expanding, and you're up to date. And you're with it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right.
And like I said, I didn't mean to make light of the question. 60% is, it will be something. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Others? Yeah, Ms. Wilson.
I just want to say thank you because anytime I've needed your services or your staff services, you have been so available to me personally in my role and efficient in a way that I think is really impressive. So thank you.
Thank you.
My background is in healthcare, and I can't do my job without our IT department. It's not possible. In my experience also, when systems don't talk to one another, the inefficiency of that is manpower hours and cost to a system. And so I appreciate that 4 of 9 was not recommended. However, with a net cost of recurring $5,800, I can appreciate that's something that we probably should look at. If it really truly does incorporate things in a way, I can appreciate that that would be valuable for you. The idea that an IT department is focused on the pillar of equity in the way that you are, thank you for doing that. It takes into consideration so many people who need you and need our services and need us to support them in their ability to access internet. My question is, although we talked about you don't have a crystal ball, for funding isn't my question, but just as you are moving into the new location and in that build out, is there anything that you wish for that we could have done that isn't getting done with this build out? Is there something that you feel like in the future we really need to strongly consider to make sure that this site is going to be adaptable, not just for now, but for the future? Because if we're making this investment, I want to make sure that it's an investment that we can grow with.
Sure. On the capital side of this project, one thing what we are not doing is, and we're calling it phase 1, is the data center is phase 1. And it has 16 racks in it, and it basically is what we need. And if there are partners at 7900 Chavanel that need space, it has sufficient space for them. And 16 racks isn't just IT, it's also traffic and all of the traffic pieces. So that's what's in that configuration, and associated with that is the air conditioning, the power. There is a single generator out there. Phase 2 is planned, but it's not funded, because that would be the second part of that would allow for co-location of partners. Our emphasis initially is going to be on co-location of public sector partners, our partners in the schools, within the universities, those type of places that might need another data center at a relatively affordable cost. And then it would be two private sector partners. So we have a very informal revenue model that works for that. I don't want to say it could be self-funding, but it could at least defer some of our lease costs that we have out there if we fund that. So that would be the only thing that really comes to my mind that we're not doing day one. I think we'll learn more about, furniture, fixtures, wall covering, all of that stuff comes in the next year. And that stuff in some ways is easier, but we've been very diligent in terms of planning the redundancies and very diligent in planning kind of what we need for offices and what we need in that data center. So it's been a pretty extensive design project that we've worked on. So, and then with the second phase also comes a second generator. So that would make it what they call a tier 3 data center, which is, really what you need to do for your failovers and high availability.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Ms.
Yeah, if
Farber?
I could just add, and we had this conversation last year.
We did.
In terms of the co-location and the tier 3, if I recall. And I think we did talk about the phased-in approach, and I agree. I think it's important to get phase 1 operational, secure, and making sure that the public safety and all of the commitments we have for that is established. And then you can do number 2, which is adding on for the co-location. And what that means is people in small businesses in particular, we can host their client servers. And therefore, they don't have to pay outrageous prices to do it somewhere else. And we can be their provider of choice. And then that is a revenue stream for us as well. And we had talked about that. And at some point, I'm sure Jenny will be happy to give us a model on revenue stream as to what those can, basically become an enterprise fund for us. So that was, I think, the conversation we had last year. I do have one more question about the playbook for AI. And I know that we're working on that concurrently. But I think just to educate everyone, that would be something that is transparent. And that every time we determine that the city will use AI, there will be a footnote somewhere that indicates the vendor and the source of the information that we're using, if we do use artificial intelligence to respond to, whether it's just an email request or some standard information that we send out. So I think that's important as we develop that, and I'll look forward to more information, maybe a work session just on AI and that playbook as we develop more information about that.
Sounds good.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Mr. Jones?
Having been one of the earlier City of Dubuque computer users, when I had I think I had like 400 megabytes of hard drive, and other departments were jealous. I've kind of watched this department grow from a one-horse operation to what it is today. It's pretty impressive. And I know what you're up against. In the cost of data security is probably the scariest unknown out there, and I think you've addressed it very handsomely over the last several years. So I haven't really got anything to ask you, except to tell you thank you. Seen it all evolve right before my eyes, and I could not be more impressed with where it's landed. And I've seen the real-life application in my public safety world where so many things move faster at getting the information to the person that needs it, including the in-vehicle data that's available instantaneously to police and fire as they respond, including all kinds of things. Management of the traffic cameras with engineering is just an unbelievable resource, one that cities all over the Midwest are jealous of. I keep getting calls from council members in other cities saying, how'd you do that? Well, our citizens asked us to. And well, how do you get them to ask you to? Because most of their citizens are asking them not to. So keep it up, kid. Good job.
Well, I'll say thank you as well, Chris. Thank you very much for the presentation and, of course, all the work that you're doing. It is an exciting year with the move coming up. That is a major move, and it's a major improvement, I think, from what we've been having before. This has been an interesting conversation, and it is every single year, because I'm going back to Mr. Resnick's comments, because we do hear this every once in a while. Your budget sort of balloons over time, but I'm trying to think of another utility that didn't exist like 30 years ago and all of a sudden does. And now it's just spiraling because that's what technology does in many ways. I mean, cities have been providing water and sewer and all these other services for eons, I mean, for a very, very long time. But this is really, really new. And it is a good question, where's the end? Where's the plateau? What's this going to look like in 20 years? And nobody has any idea. But we have choices to make. I mean, you can underfund your IT department to the point of leaving yourself completely vulnerable to attacks and breakdowns of systems and all kinds of things, and just really not very good service in general across the entire scope of the whole organization, the whole city. Or you could go top of the line. We could have all the shiniest new toys, and we're not even close to that, I'm sure, because very few people can get close to that. It's just so hard to do. But I think as far as being able to do the things we can with what we have, I've been very impressed with how you've been able to pull that off. It didn't escape me that you asked for quite a bit that you didn't get. There was a lot of improvement packages that came from your department, and we had to say no a lot. We've had to do that a lot with a lot of different departments this budget cycle, but yours was, in particular, it was a tough year for that because there was a lot of things that are there because it does continue to move forward. At the same time, though, this conversation was helpful for me in that because I do see the value in making the changes that you're making now, moving to the new location. And then, now that you are at full staff and, able to perform in that way, you can kind of see going forward what you really do need. And next year, probably have a much different, but much more pointed and data-driven conversation about this.
I think we will. And again, I'd be remiss if I didn't say I have a fantastic staff, and I am blessed with everyone every day, whether they've been here for a week or they've been here for 20, 30 plus years. I am blessed that they step up to the plate at every time we ask them, and so I couldn't do this without them. So again, I wanted to be sure that didn't go without saying, so.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And we appreciate all of them and everything that they do. We see it just like anybody else does. Things keep working and stuff just really does function well because you're doing a great job. I'm very excited to see what this next year brings with the move and cross my fingers for that fall move as you pointed out. So hopefully we can get there. But thank you very much for all the planning that goes into it and looking forward to another great year.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay. We will move on to our second presentation of the night, which is the water department. So we'll do a switch over here and then start up in a few minutes.
What's up?
That was a good presentation, maybe.
You think so?
I knew that was coming.
Test run.
I'm constantly drinking it all night.
My struggle is always just getting the PowerPoint out.
That was the hardest part.
Arrow keys are easier.
Which one? Right and left?
Arrow to go forward, back.
I thought you meant like.
All right. Ready to roll? All right. Well, Christopher, you can take it away. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you, Mayor Kavanaugh, City Council, and City Manager Van Milligan. I'm Christopher Lester, City of Dubuque Water Department Director, and I'm joined this evening by two of my staff members in the back, in the middle now, excuse me, Nick Conley, Operations Supervisor, and Mike Reinert, my electrical tech here at the water plant. We are pleased to present the Water Department's Fiscal Year 2025 budget. So we will start with the Water Department's mission statement. The City of Dubuque Water Department is passionate about delivering high-quality drinking water with excellent customer service while meeting our customers' changing needs with equitable and sustainable rates. The dedicated staff delivering high-quality drinking water are 27 employees, which remains unchanged from FY24 into fiscal year 25. Our committed team is at the service of over 24,000 customers around the clock 24/7 each year. Operating from the Eagle Point Water Treatment Plant, we ensure the quality of our drinking water while managing a vast distribution network spanning over 330 miles. In addition to treating water, our skilled staff promptly address emergency main breaks, demonstrating expertise in the latest water treatment and distribution practices. In FY 2024, our team saw several retirements and welcomed some new faces. Shown are the 7 new employees that we are pleased to have on board. We are very fortunate to continue to attract talented individuals whose values align with those of the Water Department. I would also like to recognize some of our staff that have obtained their Iowa DNR certifications during this fiscal year. Our staff seek to obtain their certifications as soon as possible in significantly less time than the Iowa DNR required time frame of 36 months. Of the 27 full-time employees in the Water Department, 19 of those positions require a minimum of a Grade 2 certification, and 6 require Grade 4 certification. Each certification examination requires a significant amount of dedication to the industry, with much of the preparation completed outside of working hours. The requirements for each level of certification include a specified amount of education and on-the-job experience. It takes time, education, and training before staff are allowed to treat and distribute our community's drinking water and excavate and work in trenches around water mains and other buried utilities. I believe it speaks volumes to the caliber of staff we have in the Water Department who are committed to being the best in their field. The City of Dubuque is a high-performance organization and community with engaged employees and residents that is data-driven and outcome-focused, built on the 5 pillars of resiliency, sustainability, equity, transparency, and compassion. The city strives to be an equitable community and as such can offer a private lead service replacement pilot program, which I will speak more on, and utility billing assistance programs. The reduced utility fee program is aimed at residents who can apply to receive a discount of up to 50% of the minimum water charge. The total reduced fees applied for the water utility in FY23 were just over $24,000, and the city was able to discount an overall combined reduced fee totaling $123,756. This program continues to be offered in FY24 with just under $20,000 in reduced individual water utility fees to date. Some highlights from FY24. Work was completed on the Burlington Street water main. The area in and around Burlington Street has been subject to several main breaks, which cause several unplanned water outages and localized flooding for adjacent properties. Water Department staff, working with its consulting engineer, installed pressure recorders on fire hydrants in the Burlington Street area to analyze the cause of the main breaks, and confirmed pressure surges due to the pump station were spiking and causing the already fatigued water main to break. The analysis also ensured the available capital funds would deliver the most value to the area. The project included the replacement of 820 feet of a 6-inch water main and installation of 2 air release valves along Burlington Street. The work was completed by Chig-Fry Excavating of Dubuque. To further reduce rapid pressure spikes in the area, variable frequency drives were installed at our Park Hill pump station. The pump station work was completed in-house with Water Department staff, eliminating the added cost of hiring outside electrical contractors. Another capital project completed in fiscal year 2024 was the Old Highway Road water main connection loop. This project provided the installation of 4,650 linear feet of 12-inch water main near the Dubuque County Fairgrounds. This is the final of the three-phased project in Pressure Zone 4, which provides a looped water main, increasing water quality as well as redundancy and resiliency to customers in the area. The contractor for this project was Top Grade Excavating of Farley, and the project was completed $78,000 or 3.4% under the bid. The Water Department implemented a proactive 5-year meter interface unit and register replacement program starting in fiscal year 2022, replacing approximately 5,000 units per year. This program is being conducted to control expenses associated with the replacement of meter reading equipment no longer under the manufacturer's warranty. The department is requesting funding in fiscal year 2025 to continue the program. And it's important to note all that work is being done with our water department staff in-house as well. The private lead service line replacement pilot program, highlighted earlier, is part of the city's desire to create an equitable community. The city is moving forward with this unique opportunity and has secured a level of bipartisan infrastructure law funding to conduct this program. This pilot program proposes to replace approximately 585 service lines over 3 phases that will take place over several years, replacing approximately 200 lines in calendar year 2024, 200 lines in calendar year 2025, and the remaining 185 lines replaced by the end of calendar year 2026. In Dubuque, the entire service line from water main to building is privately or customer-owned. This pilot program will replace the customer-owned service line at zero cost to the homeowner or tenant in census tracts and neighborhoods meeting the criteria established by a socioeconomic assessment tool provided by the Iowa DNR and the Iowa Finance Authority. The city will be eligible for 49% loan forgiveness, with the remaining 51% funding from the state revolving fund construction loans at 0% interest. FY25 funding also provides for the extension of water main from the intersection of North Cascade Road and Edval Lane to North English Road. This project will include the installation of 4,200 linear feet of 16-inch water main and 2,900 feet of 12-inch water main. Not only will this project provide improved service to existing customers, but also promote growth and development along the Southwest Arterial Corridor. While PFAS may not be catching the news in the headlines as it has in previous years, it remains a strong initiative in the drinking water industry and within the city, where we continue to make significant investments in meeting and exceeding regulatory requirements by initiating the advancement of a new deep well water supply. Deep well analytics have shown no detects of PFAS to date per our sampling requirements. The estimated cost to advance a new deep well is $4.6 million. Funding for the project is divided over 3 years, with the first round of requested funding in FY24 for $1.15 million, our FY25 request of $2.3 million, and the remaining balance to be requested in FY26. Moving on to rate increases. In FY25, a 12% rate increase over FY24 is proposed. The increase translates to an average household bill increase of $4.32 a month, using the average Dubuque monthly usage of 6,000 gallons per month. So looking here at other lime softened facilities only in Iowa, the proposed 12% rate increase would bring the average household water bill to $39.07 for 6,000 gallons, putting us right in the middle of the pack. At that rate, Dubuque will have the 4th lowest rate among Iowa lime softened facilities, the highest being West Des Moines, which is 13.18% higher than Dubuque's proposed rate, and the average rate, not including Dubuque, just slightly higher than our proposed rate. The Water Department organization is comprised of 3 divisions: administration, operations and treatment, and distribution. Administration oversees and is directly involved in employee training and development, regulatory compliance, and capital improvement planning. The second division is plant operations, where our certified operators and maintenance staff ensure regulatory compliance, the daily production and treatment of our water supply, maintenance of our wells and well fields, pumping to the distribution system, operations and maintenance of our water storage facilities, and the supervisory, control, and data acquisition system, or SCADA, by which our system communicates to its operators. A valuable metric in the water department starts with the measured production and treatment of drinking water at the water plant operations. When we examine the treated water compared to the end customer metered water, we can determine our non-revenue water or water losses in the distribution system. Looking at FY23, we treated just over 2.5 billion gallons of water and measured or metered just under 2.1 billion gallons. Metered water is measured consumption, which is the sum of billed consumption and unbilled but authorized consumption, and is a known quantity based on the city's metering system. When we look at the difference between these two values, approximately 21% is non-revenue water. Non-revenue water is water that is not billed and no payment is received. This includes the water used at fire hydrants for firefighting, water main flushing to maintain water quality, street cleaning, water lost during main breaks, or leaks in the service lines of customers or the distribution system. It also includes apparent losses, also referred to as commercial losses, and consists of unauthorized consumption, customer metering inaccuracies, and systematic data handling errors in the meter reading and billing processes. It is important to measure this value as it helps better understand the performance of the distribution system, meter performance, and where valuable capital dollars should be spent. The American Water Works Association, an organization that establishes industry standards used and accepted by regulatory bodies such as the DNR, has migrated away from using a benchmark which has varied over the years between 16 and 20% for water loss, and has moved towards utilities performing water audits to establish what percentage of water loss is appropriate or allowable for each individual system. The final division is water distribution. The city must operate and maintain over 330 miles of water main ranging in diameter from 4-inch up to 30-inch, 8,078 public control valves, 2,646 public fire hydrants, and over 24,000 curb box valves with a 7-person distribution crew and 1 4-person. The distribution crew also conducts inspections, pressure testing, and bacterial testing on new development water main installation, assisting the contractor where necessary to ensure the safety of the water supply during construction. In addition, our distribution crew conducts new service main taps, curb box, and valve replacements, and as time and conditions permit, install new water main in addition to flushing of water mains and exercising of public water main valves. The distribution crew also includes a 4-person meter crew performing meter management for over 24,000 meters, registers, meter interface units, or MIUs, installed throughout our homes and business, along with the city's backflow prevention program. So to date, for FY24, we're at 36 main breaks. You can see that's a pretty significant decline, even from FY22. I don't know if you recall last year, we talked about some operational changes that were made that we thought were really proving to be valuable. Changing how pumps in the system are turned off and on, to reduce pressure spikes. For comparison, at the presentation last year, we were at 65 main breaks at the time of presentation. Again, tonight we're at 36, and that's with just one this morning. So I really think those operational changes are showing that they're the right thing to do and helping us in the bottom line here. And again, we're continuing to look for new ways to reduce those main breaks, look at what operational changes can be made to reduce the impact on the distribution system. So this is a stat we're pretty proud of and looking to decrease even further. To date, for FY 2024, we are at 43 service taps. So any new connection is known as a service tap. These funds are used directly for the installation of new services installed by the city's water department distribution crews. New connections result from community growth, such as new housing, business, and industry. As I mentioned earlier, part of the distribution crew are a 4-member water meter operation and maintenance crew. This crew provides dependable meter management consisting of testing, dismantling, cleaning, repairing, and reassembling meters as required. They also perform installation services, address pressure complaints, investigate illegal use of water, install outside registers, and perform special reading of meters upon request. To date, in FY24, the crew has responded to just over 5,500 service calls, with 3,640 of those being in the proactive R900 changeouts. So they're definitely keeping busy in the meter division. The water department also administers a backflow prevention program. A backflow prevention device is just what it sounds like. It's a device that works to prevent our drinking water system from contamination or pollution due to backflow or a negative pressure in the system. So for the backflow prevention program, we do charge an administrative fee of $25 a device, and that is reviewed annually to confirm the fee reflects actual costs. FY 2024 revenue to date, we've taken in just under $80,000, and we currently track just under 3,200 backflow prevention devices each year. FY25 capital improvement projects, I've highlighted, the PFAS reduction project, the Southwest Arterial Water Main Extension, the private lead service line replacement pilot program, and the water meter replacement program. Those are 4 of our significant ones, but you can see the remaining capital improvement projects we have on the books for FY25. Performance measures, goals that are improving. I spoke about the number of breaks per 100 miles of pipe. Therefore, O&M costs for water distribution per 100 miles of pipe is also improving. And operation of 10% of distribution system valves annually, that's also improving. So making significant progress in all of those, but again, we seek to continue to improve each year on those. Goals that are currently on track, and one that I like to highlight every year, is number of regulatory compliance violations. Our target is 0, and we met that again. We're on track to meet it again for FY24. In addition to goals that are on track of annual training hours to support CEUs, and number of projects completed within the program budget. We made it. I'll be happy to take any questions you might have at this time.
Thank you very much, Christopher. Well, first, we are in a public hearing to discuss the Water Department budget for fiscal year 25. Do we have any public input on that? I see no one here. Anything virtually? Thank you. Anything from the city clerk's office?
Nothing.
Thank you, Trish. Back to us then for questions and discussion. Yeah, Mr. Sprank.
Mr. Mayor, everybody always appreciates having their water working, and so thank you to everybody down at the water department that makes that happen. My question, I had a citizen on Saturday ask me an update on PFAS, and I kind of explained what the goal is with the new well. How long will that take to get that online?
So it's about a 3-year process, and again, we're in the early stages. We're looking to identify a consultant, more than likely Strand, that'll be taking the first steps, applying for the SRF funding, locating a site for it. So I would say, roughly 3 years, so early 2027, late 2026 would be our target goal this time.
Okay. What will happen to the old wells then if they're the shallow wells that it's been detected in?
So the current strategy that we have in place since we found the initial DTEX back in 2021 or 22, I think it's 2022, was we utilize the deep wells as much as possible to meet demand. There's going to be times of the year, specifically in the summertime, where those deep wells, we don't have the capacity to meet the demand. So we supplement with the shallow wells. For now, that'll continue to be the plan. With this new deep well, I think it's going to be close to 4 million gallons per day output, so that's going to greatly improve what we can send to the plant and also, put out to the distribution system. So the amount that will need those shallow wells will significantly decrease, but that'll also be something that's identified as part of this new well, kind of how we're going to shift operations and what the plan is for those shallow wells.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Resnick.
Thank you very much. It's great to have water 24/7, and I want to talk about fire safety too. We had the fire department in the other day, and it's very important that those materials have to be ready. The water's ready when they're ready to use it. So thank you for that. I just want to make sure that people know that we do that, and that's something to keep in mind. Now, so the water fund is an enterprise fund, which means citizens pay for their water with their fees. We don't use tax dollars in this for the water department. Is that true?
That's correct.
Okay. So we plan a lot of investment coming up. You mentioned the investment in the Southwest Arterial, so you're going to supply them with water. That area which we have, we think we know is going to grow, but you're not going to grow without water. But you have to invest it first. So we're spending millions of dollars investing that this area have water, for the people who are moving out there or having businesses out there. So once they hook up, once they build, then they start paying into the system, correct? So do you anticipate, I know Mr. Van Milligan hates raising rates 12%. But that's how we work in the water department with the enterprise fund. We have to put money into investment. But then we should be getting, we anticipate some return on that, right? What can we perhaps anticipate, or Mr. Van Milligan might want to talk about this, as far as rates, 4 or 5 years from now when things are building, people are building, and they can use your water for fire suppression as well as just, being at, water supply to their business or home. So when do we think that we might really start gaining from this investment? That's my question. Thank you.
If you don't mind, City Manager Mike Van Milligan, and I want to compliment you on your perceptiveness, Councilmember Resnick, for relating the fire department to the water department. So you're not the only one that does that. So the Insurance Service Organization, ISO as the initials, they actually rate fire departments around the country, and their rating is what insurance companies use to decide what do commercial and industrial customers pay for their fire insurance. And there are very few Class 2 fire departments in the country. So you can be rated from Class 1, which is the absolute best, to Class 10. And there's very, very few Class 1s, and there's very few Class 2s. We are a Class 2 fire department. And that's a great honor for us to be that, and it's a great savings for our commercial and industrial customers on their fire insurance. But it's not just an analysis of the capabilities of the fire department, which it is. It's also an analysis of our 911 communication system and our water system. Because if a fire truck or a fire engine shows up at a fire and they don't have a reliable water source, they're not going to do much good. And so a very important part of that ISO Class 2 classification is the fact that we have a great water system that you've invested in. And you talk about the 12% rate increase for this year, you're right. It doesn't do us any satisfaction to recommend a rate increase of that amount. But one of the things we're able to do this year is there's a federal program which is funneled through the state of Iowa that allows us to replace lead service lines for individual homeowners. And the really nice attributes of the federal program is 51%. So we borrow the money through this federal program. 51% of the loan is forgiven, but that leaves 49% left. And so, I'm sorry, it's the opposite actually. 49% is forgiven, and that leaves 51% left that has to be paid back. And under the federal rules, it can't be the homeowner. This program has to be free to the homeowner, and it's targeted to low-income property owners. And so to take advantage of that program and that 49% forgiveness of the loan, and I believe the other 51%, I think that's interest-free, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
The mayor and city council chose to apply for that. We were successful in that application. So we're going to be able to replace over 500 low-income property owners' lead service lines under this program. And yes, would the rate increase have been less if we hadn't accessed that program? The answer is yes, but we also wouldn't have replaced those lead service lines. And over time, we'd like to replace them all. There's over 3,000 in our community. And so we'll look for other opportunities to do that. But this certainly is an ideal opportunity when you get an interest-free loan that is 49% forgivable.
Thank you very much. And your anticipated investment into the Southwest Arterial, I know you have some good reasons for some high hopes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And I apologize that I didn't even answer your original question. I got all caught up in the other answers. Yeah, so your original question was that. And yes, so, the state invested, $130 million to build the Southwest Arterial. And that's really the only growth corridor for the city of Dubuque, because if you go to the east, you have the river. If you go to the north, you got billy goat country. And if you go to the south, I don't even know if a billy goat could do it. And of course, you got the mines of Spain. And so really, our growth corridor is southwest. And so you're going to see other investments in that corridor with sanitary sewers. But yes, we want to open that corridor up for development. And we anticipate over the years that development will create a lot of utility revenues for our water department and sanitary sewer, and of course a lot of property tax revenue, which of course will also help keep people's property taxes down. So that is our growth corridor, and investing in water and sanitary sewer is the only way to get any development out there, because people are not going to develop without those city utilities.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. Mr. Jones.
Two things. This spring, the community lost a young man to an excavation collapse, a utility excavation. I've always been impressed with the job that your department does in making the holes as safe as they can be before you get in them. And that's pretty amazing when there's water coming out of them and it's an emergent situation. It's kind of amazing how the gas company works it when they've got natural gas escaping and explosion and fire hazards. I want to commend you for that and remind everybody how important that is. Those incidents, thank God, are few and far between, but they're almost all preventable with proper shoring and proper preparation, almost all. And I'm sure that one was. So I just wanted to touch on that and thank you for the diligence that your crews used. Then I want to talk about the deep wells for a second. Is there any way, short of adding wells, to increase the capacity? I know pump size and casing size kind of limit a well's output. Are we up to the casing capacity, or I mean, are we sucking what we can out of them without harming the hardware?
Are you talking to the existing deep wells, Rick? Mr. Jones, excuse me? Yes, there's a lot that factors into that. Obviously, we're only allowed to pull so much out of the aquifer each day, so that's all done through the DNR, through permit applications. So I think the wells that we have now, yes, we're running those at current capacity. A lot of those wells are close to 100 years, if not 100 years old. Not all of them, some of them are quite old. So I believe those are at max capacity. We do budget to rehab those, with, I think, every 3 to 5 years, depending on whether it's a deep or a shallow. I think I almost forgot your question here, Mr. Jones. But yeah, a lot of it has to do with getting the DNR permission, where we can put another hole in the earth. The DNR likes to try to avoid, too many holes in the earth, if you will. But again, to touch on your original comment, yeah, they're at capacity, or the permit for those would have to be updated. But yeah, the DNR, especially with the PFAS now, I think the most affordable solution for communities is advancing deep wells. So working with them to be able to draw as much as you'd like to meet your community needs is going to be a large part of that process.
Thank you. Ms. Wetham.
So I wonder, Chris, if you dream sometime that you could actually have a city that was new infrastructure, because I would think in your job, I've lived in Colorado once where everything was new, and that's just not our city. And I'm grateful for that. I love Dubuque for our historic structure and charm, but our infrastructure, we need to take charge on this. And so I appreciate your department does that and is doing it really thoughtfully. I think you said it just now. We have wells that are 100 years old. And this is about the future of our infrastructure. And we hear that we need to grow as a city. And although I do wish that we did not have to change our rates in this way, I think that it's forward thinking in the way that we're doing it, and we're targeting it where we need to. And so I appreciate your guidance for us and how we do that. I appreciate how you have, when I came on council, shown me where we're at and what we need to update, and we need to do it with some urgency, and PFAS is a great example. So I just want to say thank you, and I hope that you dream about our city too.
Well, Christopher, thank you very much. I have a couple questions for you. Related to some slides that you had here. New service taps. I probably asked the same question last year, and I forgot that I asked the question, but I'm curious. The 311 in fiscal year 22, what was the story there? Why were they so much higher than, because the 43 and the 67 from the last 2 years makes sense based on the amount of, we're expecting more development, but we haven't seen quite so much pick up yet. Do you know the answer?
Yeah, so I think Silver Oak subdivision south of town there was constructed during the fiscal year 2022, and that was a significant amount of those taps. So again, just like you had mentioned, it's largely based on community growth, new housing, businesses, and industry. So FY 20 and 21 were low. That was definitely impacted by COVID. It had really slowed down from like the FY 18, 19. Again, it's kind of where we are, where we land based on what the economy is doing and where we're at for now for this fiscal year is 43. But again, hopefully spring is here to stick around and we'll see some new construction and those numbers will increase here by the end of this fiscal year.
Got it. Thank you. That's helpful. And then the next slide, the very next slide. This was an interesting description that you gave about this water distribution and then no, actually, I'm sorry, backwards. One more slide. The water main break response, and then a couple slides before that, you had the treated and metered stuff. So I noticed that the water main breaks went way down, like you mentioned. Congratulations on that, by the way. I agree with you. I think the procedural changes you're making seem to be making a really big difference, and that's really exciting to see because we'd like to see things stay intact. But barring those 36 breaks being much larger in volume than the ones from the years before at 84 and 117. The difference between the treated and the metered water is an interesting one because it would seem like that number should go down then, that the metered water, or that the gap should close, I should say, that we should see more of a gap closing. We didn't really see that. So I guess my question is, with having absolutely no knowledge on this subject, do we have any way to track how water loss like that really occurs? Like how much of it is main breaks versus how much of it is potential like essentially you mentioned illegal activity. There's also other things that just sort of happen, losses in different places or hydrants being flushed. I mean, do we have any way to track that accurately?
Yes, there are metrics that can be used, and we do those internally to the best of our ability. Those include like active leakage control, pressure management, which is a big part of why our main breaks have significantly decreased, infrastructure management, and speed of repair. So obviously, we talked about our distribution crew is fantastic. If there's a main break, there's somebody on call and they're out there immediately. They'll close a valve, try and get that number reduced. But why is that not impacting the treated versus metered? That's a good question. That's one of the many facets of what contributes to that difference between the treated versus metered. So what we're doing internally, a water audit is probably the right path to go. That I don't have a whole lot of experience with water audits personally, but yeah, I guess the answer, Mr. Mayor, is that there's always things we can be doing better. A lot of those requests will come with a financial request as well, an improvement package per se. So definitely one of our goals is to narrow that gap between the treated and metered, and so I think that's a great thing for us to do is take a hard look at what we're doing, what can we be doing better, and then what, if there's any required financial assistance that we'll have to seek to better track those metrics.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's just an interesting statistic and something to keep in mind as we look ahead for years, because obviously you want to make sure that we're billing for everything we can, obviously, to be able to do that and not losing that water in that way. But I appreciate that it comes with internal processes that can help with that too. So
yeah, a popular thing that we would like to do is their district metered zones. And so essentially every zone out in the community, if it has a meter in that certain area, we can track what's going into it. Let's see. Bear with me here. I'm trying to recall exactly how these function, but that's a couple of my staff members went to a conference in Denver last fall, and district meter zones are kind of the way to go about this. And so essentially, you're looking at what you're pumping into it versus, I think, what's moving through it, or what's metered into it, and kind of compare those losses. So at the very least, what it will do for you is narrow down which zones are the issues. Like if you're pumping, say, 1 million gallons a day into this one zone, but you're only metering 600,000, that's probably a good indication that that's one of your problem zones where you can do like a leak detection survey. When your meter crew is in there doing a meter repair, look for any like illegal meter tampering or something. Probably not going to be. We're not looking at a 250 million gallons of water or anything specifically, but different things. The district metered zones are probably I think the preferred method to start, and of course those would require some financial assistance. But again, something we can definitely look into is maybe an improvement package for next year or some recurring funding for the budget.
Interesting. Thank you. That's very informative. Yeah, Mr. Jones.
Just a quick comment on water use. Having opened a number of hydrants over a 30-year period with my fire department, I would, and this is just spamming here, but I would guess that your average main break probably loses less water than a day of hydrant flushing. You move a lot of water doing that. But fire department training day, where you're pulling 2,000 gallons a minute for several hours, that's a big amount of water in the course of that training day, and that's happening all summer long out in the Bradford Road facility, or out in the Public Safety Way facility and elsewhere. So I'm not too alarmed that number doesn't change a whole lot. I think we use a lot of water for fire training and a lot of water for fire suppression, and we're using a lot less in fire suppression because we're stopping fires in the room of origin almost all the time. So that's pretty neat. But you have to use a lot of water to get good at using water. Mm-hmm. And that's a fact of fire suppression.
Yeah. Well, this is a helpful discussion. I'm learning a lot, so thank you. Yeah. All right. Yeah, Ms. Farber.
Just a point of public information. You have an online system, do you not, or some kind of a system where you can alert users about extra water running and things like that at their home? Is that through the...
We had the Water Smart program, and that has been replaced with Tyler software. And I don't know, Jenny Larson, does the Tyler software have that capability to alert users of leaks and whatnot? That it does have that?
Right.
The portal? Okay. Yep. So, yeah, the customers also have that through the Tyler portal.
Right. I just want to say that it's very, very helpful. all around, whether you are a landlord or a residential user. And I think that the more people that can sign up for it, the more beneficial it is, because as soon as there's a run, for whatever reason, you are contacted, and hopefully you can resolve the issue very quickly. So I think it's a great public service, so I want to thank you for setting that up. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Well, Christopher, thank you very much. I think you've answered all the questions we have and appreciate all the great information.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, moving on then to our third presentation of the evening, which is the Water and Resource Recovery Center.
Ding.
Something,
Yes.
because I use it, and I get dinged all the time.
Like you say, it's good for, speaking of water, landlords as well.
It is.
Water usages.
Eyes are tired. I think I might have looked at the eclipse too long today. It's fascinating. Oh, Darren, you're fast.
Here goes my favorite.
My glass of water yet? Okay, excellent. Well, we will move on then to water and resource recovery.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. I'm Water and Resource Recovery Center Director Darren Meering, and I'll be presenting the Water and Resource Recovery Center Fiscal Year 25 budget. First, I want to introduce a few of my staff. Willie O'Brien, Plant Manager, and Cheryl Pregler, our Confidential Account Clerk. And I'm going to date myself a little bit here, but Cheryl is kind of like our Radar O'Reilly at our facility. And I don't know if she's ever mentioned this, but I think she can hear a hauled waste truck from miles away coming. So, as I walk through the presentation, I think listeners and people who are paying attention are going to see how our facility and how the work we do is related to the 5-year 2023-25 City Council goals. Certainly, how we perform our work ties right into financial responsibility and high performance city government. The work we do, we support local businesses and industries that utilize our services, again, in support of a robust local economy. And certainly, treating wastewater, protecting the environment fits right in with the livable neighborhoods and housing, sustainable environments. I mentioned the important work we do at the Water Resource Recovery Center. In addition to protecting human health, as this photo helps to illustrate, we're kind of like the last line of defense of preventing the wastewater generated in our community to reaching and harming the Mississippi. So really the work we do is critical to helping preserve our masterpiece on the Mississippi. But none of it happens without the people who work at the Water Resource Recovery Center. People who have dedicated themselves to the noble task of safeguarding our environment. A shared commitment to, taking wastewater and transforming it from what could be potentially harmful into actual resources that can be reused. They exhibit expertise and competence and problem solving, and just really a shared commitment to the work that they do and each other. And I just feel very, very fortunate that I'm a member of the Water Resource Recovery Center team. And some of the new faces this year, me, that's the top left there. But more importantly, we have John Wiley, our industrial pretreatment coordinator, who's doing amazing work. And Wayne Paulsine, who you may remember he retired last year, but he missed us so much that he's now come back to work part-time for us. And our two new operators, John Greenwood and Jim Herbst. We're so lucky that they've joined our team. Even though they're new and still in training, they're already contributing greatly to our operation just with their experience, but also just their outside perspective as they go about their daily work. Our core services include treating wastewater and from the community, both from the sanitary sewer collection system and also hauled waste. We administer an industrial pretreatment program and also a fats, oils, and grease program, and we also operate a state-certified laboratory. And to do all of that, we have 17.25 full-time equivalents. This is a 0.25 difference from last year. Early this spring, we added I guess it'll be late winter, we added 0.25 for the part-time maintenance supervisor position. Just to walk through the functional areas. Within the functional areas, we have 1 FTE assigned to the industrial pretreatment program. And federal regulations require the city to ensure that the pollutants and the wastewater we receive at the Water Resource Recovery Center does not interfere with the operation of our facility. So this program really entails issuing permits to specific industries, monitoring and performing inspections, and really just ensuring permit compliance. And it's just one more way that we help protect the public health and the environment. We also have 1.35 FTEs for the fats, oils, and grease compliance program. Keeping fats, oils, and grease, or FOG for short, out of the sanitary sewer system is important to prevent clogged pipes and sanitary sewer overflows, which could be in the street or it could be in someone's basement. And so, and FOG can also lead to issues with, say, our lift stations and our overall plant operation. So our FOG-related work actually at the Water Resource Recovery Center is twofold. First, we issue permits for food establishments and monitor those permits for compliance. And then secondly, we actually accept and treat FOG at our wastewater facility. Then there's our largest work center of 6 FTEs for the operation of the treatment process at the Water Resource Recovery Center. Utilizing physical, biological, and chemical processes to treat wastewater, we treat approximately 6.7 million gallons of wastewater per day, removing about 94% of the pollutant load before discharging the water into the Mississippi. But as our name indicates, we do more than simply treat wastewater. We recover resources for further use. So the treated water, also called effluent, we actually reuse at our facility for our heating and cooling systems. It's also used by communities downstream of us as drinking water. They treat it first, but they do use it. We also create a nutrient-dense biosolid, which are used as an agricultural soy amendment. And then the biogas that is produced by the anaerobic digesters is cleaned by a private partner, injected into the natural gas pipeline as a renewable gas. We have 4.25 FTEs dedicated to maintain the various treatment systems and the 28 lift station and facilities throughout the city. So our maintenance staff, supported by plant operations, perform planned maintenance on pumps and motors and valves and equipment. But it also requires making unplanned repairs when things break down to keep the facility in operation and functioning, which can involve mechanical type repairs, electrical work as required, again, to make sure that we're complying with our discharge permit limits. And lift station maintenance is also under our facility or our department. And while the functionality of a lift station can be monitored remotely using what we call SCADA, remote lift stations are visited each week to verify that they're functioning, that there's no issues. We want to identify any potential issues before they become big issues or before there's backups and in waste or sanitary sewer overflows. Lift stations generally utilize the same equipment and same electronic control as the treatment facility, and they must be maintained in a similar fashion. We have 3 FTEs associated with our environmental laboratory. And so we maintain the state-certified environmental lab, and it serves the needs of multiple city departments. We also serve the general public, analyzing water from private water supply systems and also wastewater treatment systems. Maintaining our certification means that the testing results that we provide, that they're accurate and legally defensible in terms of environmental regulations. And then there's 1.2 FTEs for administration. Just moving on to some of our challenges and opportunities in the current fiscal year. We had 5 full-time vacancies to fill in FY24. And these vacancies, led to some operational issues. We had operators who were working 12-hour days, and some of them are still working 12-hour days, sometimes working as many as 80 hours per week. And so we owe a special thanks to Eric, Andy, and Judd for carrying such a heavy burden during this time period. Our industrial pretreatment program was inspected by the EPA and noted some deficiencies that we've been working to address. But we've also hired John Wiley as our city's industrial pretreatment coordination, and he brings incredible energy to our department, and I have no doubt that in a few years we'll have one of the best programs in the state. We also struggle with some equipment reliability issues. I mean, it's hard to believe that it's been 15 years already since the last treatment plant upgrade, and some of the components actually predate the last upgrades. And so we have some proposed CIP projects to kind of help improve equipment reliability issues. For example, the bar screens here have been kind of an issue we've been dealing with that I'll just go into more detail. Again, dealing with struvite, it's remained something that we have been dealing with that increased the cost of our operations. This just shows a valve on the left that's just full of this mineralite deposit inside the system that obviously makes it potentially that you can't even operate that valve, but obviously plugging flow as well if it's in a pipe, making equipment work harder and use more power and electricity. And we've also been dealing with some odor issues. The digester issues that I had on the previous slide is something that caused us to handle waste differently at our facility. So we had to dump waste and temporarily store it in the kind of the tank that's shown there in orange on the screen. And that led to some extraordinary odors coming from our facility that people certainly in this area had to endure, but even people in downtown Dubuque were impacted by these odors. We've returned to handling waste the way we did prior to the digester issue, as those are now fully functional. And we're still working to dispose of the waste that's disposing of that waste. But we do note that since stopping adding the waste into that tank has reduced the waste emanating from that facility. So I don't want to give people the impression that we've done some miraculous thing and those odors have just disappeared. That just kind of happened as part of that process, and we still need to high on our priority list to deal with that waste. We're working up several options on how to do that, and we're working with the DNR on how to safely and in terms of environmentally to get rid of that waste as soon as we can. Some of our current initiatives, we're still trying to fill one vacancy, and that one's on me. Really kind of reviewing the role of this vacancy, identifying specific needs of our facility, the skills and abilities and responsibilities that we would need to best serve the staff that we have. So that's an ongoing process. We're also looking to implement an asset management, preventative maintenance work order system to ensure equipment runs effectively, gets maintained on a regular schedule. We've created a safety team, and we're working to update our safety program. And then we continue to have the ongoing, more long-term odor reduction analysis taking place. And so far that study has identified 3 locations where we can dose the waste stream to reduce hydrogen sulfide, which is the most common gas emitted at a wastewater treatment facility. Improvement package, a recommended improvement package includes funding, $150,000 to dose with hydrogen peroxide, just ahead of the primary clarifiers. And that improvement package also includes funding to dose the system at 2 other locations, but this time using ferric chloride or iron salts, again, to reduce hydrogen sulfide emissions. But in this case, one of the byproducts that will also help with that struvite issue. And while the dosing has begun, it's going to take us a few months to figure out, and that's where the analysis comes from. We have to figure out what is the optimum dosing level of the ferric chloride, because we don't want to, overdosing just means we're throwing literally money down the drain. We do post periodic updates related to odor reduction efforts on our website at www.cityofdubuque.org/odor control. The FY25 CIP budget includes $8.2 million for Water and Resource Recovery Center updates. One of the funded efforts is the development of a facility plan for the Water Resource Recovery Center. The real purpose of a facility plan is to determine how best to meet the wastewater treatment needs of the community in the coming years. You know, the drivers are the age of the various systems, performance, regulatory changes like the upcoming nutrient reduction that is going to be written into our permit at some point, and also just plant capacity issues based on where do we see our community growing and by how much, and how much pollutant load will that demand of our facility. Our last facility plan was in 2008, and it was through the planning year of 2030. So that's why we're looking to move forward on one now. This will also dovetail nicely with the engineering department's asset management plan study that's also going to be looking at what are the needs, future needs of the city going forward in certain areas of our community. We also have the high-strength waste receiving and storage program that will allow us to better control and meter how hauled waste is entered into our facility. Some of this high-strength waste, it's almost like sugar, and so the system can be like, oh, that's, you know, they just consume it really fast, but that can throw the system out of balance. And so these storage tanks will be able to, like I said, be able to meter that waste into the system so it doesn't have that imbalance. We have a proposed improvement package for a rate increase for the tipping fees associated with hauled waste, and those tipping fees would cover the cost of the debt payments for the $7.3 million improvement. The industrial control CIP will also help address some ongoing electrical control issues we've been having. The photo there on the left is the motor control center, or the MCC, of actually the anaerobic digestion treatment process, or the building. And really the MCC is the kind of the brains of the whole treatment process. And we've had a series of failures with these systems. One caused a sanitary sewer overflow at the Terminal Street lift station. We've had issues at Building 10, which is our headwater or headworks where the wastewater enters our facility. And for example, that's requiring us to run those bar screens all the time versus being on automatic. So what that means, we're using more electricity than we should have to, and it'll also shorten the useful life of those bar screens. And really what's happening is the electronic control systems of these facilities are obsolete. And one of the reasons why they're obsolete is because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Because if you remember, there was shortages of resources, or like natural resources. So companies that manufacture these electrical components stopped putting their money, their limited resources, into the older technology, and they put it all into the newer technology. And so now they no longer produce this equipment or service it. And so anything that breaks down now, we have to go and find it on like an aftermarket type approach, and it's not, it's just not warranted by the actual manufacturer. And so this CIP will provide to replace all those units within a 3-year period. We have 9 improvement package requests recommended for funding, as outlined here. I'll talk more about the first 3 in more detail. These other ones are really directly related to improving safe operations, improving communications and data management, and also improving inspection and compliance programs, and really across all functional areas. a little more detail on these first three. So I mentioned this first one is related to increasing revenue for tipping fees to offset the costs of the debt required for the $7.3 million high-strength waste receiving and storage CIP project. The second one is for digester cleaning, again, just to ensure that we can clean these, each of these 4 digesters shown in the back of the photo there on a kind of a rolling basis. By keeping them clean, they'll function more efficiently. They'll also emit less odors as well. And then finally, the chemical dosing that I discussed earlier, this improvement package will provide for the dosing at those 3 locations with both hydrogen peroxide at the one location and ferric chloride at another. And I forgot to mention too, in terms of odor control, you know, we also recognize it's not just about chemical dosing. There are also things that we can do at our facility to minimize odors. So for example, we have a drying pad where people will come and like Public Works will, when maybe they'll clean out a catch basin or something and it'll be kind of a wet mixture. Well, they'll come and dump it on the pad and they will, the whole point is it dries out there until it can be scooped up and brought to the landfill. And so that's something we can get better at. In fact, one of the improvement package requests is for that skid loader, or compact track loader, I should say. That'll help with that as well. The proposed rate increase for the sanitary sewer is 9% rate increase, and the monthly impact would be $4.50 for the average household. It's important to remember that the sanitary sewer fee funds more than just operations in the Water and Resource Recovery Center. It funds the efforts of the Public Works Department, who has to maintain over 300 miles of sanitary sewer. It also funds making necessary improvements to the collection system, projects that you'll hear about when the engineering department presents their budget. But just some of the things listed here, helping to implementation the Chaplain-Schmidt Island Master Plan, residential development on Kerper Boulevard, all kinds of development in the Catfish Creek watershed, including industrial parks and industry expansion, and then obviously just improving operations at our Water Resource Recovery Center so that we can accommodate the waste generated by local industries. The proposed rate will support $66 million in needed investments in not only the wastewater treatment side, but also the collection system side. Based on the average use of 6,000 gallons of water use per month, Dubuque's rate is roughly 20% higher than the average of the 10 largest cities in Iowa that actually have wastewater treatment facilities. We actively worked to engage citizens. One way is through the City Life program, but we also give tours, regular tours, to the general public so they can understand what we do at our facility and the role we play in the community. Another way we help create an equitable community of choice is the program that Mr. Lester mentioned earlier, where we also have a fee reduction for sanitary sewer fees for low or moderate income residents, or income qualifying residents, I should say. And if people want to find out more about that, they can contact the utility billing department. In closing, the proposed Water and Resource Recovery Center budget, will support investment in our community. It includes investment in infrastructure needed to continue to thrive, continue to grow, and really to help maintain our masterpiece on the Mississippi. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the city manager Mike Van Milligan for his guidance and leadership. And I'd like to thank the city council for your continued support and for the important work that we do at the Water Resource Recovery Center. So thank you. Man, I'd be happy to handle any questions.
All right, thank you very much, Darren. Well, we are in a public hearing to discuss the Water and Resource Recovery Center budget for fiscal year 25. Do we have any public input here? I see no one here. Do we have any public input virtually? Anything from the city clerk's office?
No.
Okay, then we will come back to us for questions and discussion. Mr. Jones?
You talked about Public Works dumping wet loads of glop that's ultimately going to the landfill. Should we maybe invest in a place to dump that at the landfill? Does that make more sense? Or is the liquid waste why it's coming to you in the first place?
Our staff have had that thought, so we definitely have to relook at a minimum at our facility how we handle it because it's been an issue. But one of the thoughts would be to maybe explore something like that. And if, for example, if it's going to require us to make investment in what we have today, then it definitely would make sense to consider, well, what if we made the same investment at the landfill instead, to be able to cut out the loading and then hauling it all the way to the landfill after the fact.
I hope that conversation takes place internally. And the other one that comes with that is the question of food waste in general is a big one we deal with at the Solid Waste Agency Board. People sneak meat and poultry and dairy waste into the food waste recycling program, so far to an amount that hasn't ruined the program, but it's technically not allowed. We ought to find a way to manage that material better, and bringing it to your facility where it can be macerated and treated is one answer. Bringing it to the landfill and doing some treatment with it, there is another answer. Expanding capacity is another answer that's on our side of the coin to discuss. But just need to plant that seed that I want to make sure there's cross-departmental conversation about that, because it's a problem we'd like to solve.
Yeah.
In the best way possible.
Absolutely.
And I just have to make one other comment. I really admire the efforts you're making in odor control, and we've got a problem, and I'm committed to helping solve it. But in all the meetings we've had talking about that, nobody said, and it's time somebody does, that this is not a lot dissimilar to someone building a nice house next to the airport and then being disappointed that the airplanes make noise. Wastewater treatment plants smell bad sometimes. And a lot of housing has happened right close to it that people have chosen to do, and it's a consequence of living there. So some days it's going to smell a little bit bad, and that's just a fact, and one that frankly they volunteered for. And I don't mean to be vindictive or mean to those neighbors, because they shouldn't have to deal with it as many days as they have, and I appreciate the fact that we're dealing with it. But someone had to say that at some point, and so I volunteered.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
So
Ms. Farmer.
speaking of safeguarding the air and our environment, and thank you very much for being the last line of defense. I did want to give you some feedback about the odor abatement and everything that's being done, and I greatly appreciate the broad brush and all of the sophisticated attempts on the chemicals and also on the cleansing of the digesters. But I wanted to share with you a text I received yesterday. And this is from someone who lives on South Grandview. And he said that there have been no complaints because there has been little or no odor emanating from the sewage wastewater treatment plant. That was most recently. He said, unfortunately, last night I went to a restaurant to get some carry-out for basketball food, and it was the first time I had smelled the sewer plant in quite a while. On a scale of 10, it was about a 5. But there it was once again. This morning I walked my dog and I could smell the sewer odor. However, it was mostly under a chemical mask. Not good, but not terrible. So I just wanted to share that with you, that it's getting, we're getting the feedback on a regular basis, which I think is good because then we can help you monitor. But the fact that it's easing, it's winter as well, we understand that. But I just appreciate the communication, and I appreciate the fact that the information is on the website, and therefore people can just, access that accordingly. But thank you very much for being so transparent, and thank you very much for keeping the communication lines open, because I think it's important for those residents and for those of us in that area just to be cognizant of everything. So, but I did what was said in terms of all the appreciation that you gave us. I give it back to you. Thank you.
Mr. Resnick.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. I just wanted to mention, as long as we're talking about this, that the citizen input has resulted in $500,000 a year, every year, that is going to go in to the odor control. So I hope that the citizens understand that, You've done a lot of work, and we are all ponying up to see if we can get fewer odors off of this. So, yeah, I think we have done our due diligence, and you continue to work on it, and you're going to figure out what the best mix is so that we can get rid of it as much as we can. But I mean, $500,000 every year is, substantial. And I hope people appreciate that, and hope they appreciate your good work of the department. My question to you is, we have a $315,000 proposed facility plan, and that plan anticipates needs and costs, and you got to have one. Do we ever, look back and evaluate the plans that we've paid for before? Because I don't know. Some have been, my experience, some of these anticipatory plans are very good, and some get stuck on the shelf, or they don't appear to have been slightly accurate even. So do we go back? I know it's been 2008, so it's time. But do we keep track with the data about what they predict and what actually happens?
Yeah, there are certain things that we track. For example, the loads of BOD or TSS, just certain pollutants that enter our facility, and the projections. Part of the facility plan, well, I guess to answer your question, we do pay attention to what has been done before and why we moved away from something that we did. Technology is always changing, and so that plays a part. But like I said, we do go back and track, and we have to project out, okay, for the next 20 years. That's just part of the whole permitting process as well, to be able to understand what the demands of the facility are going to be. And I haven't gone back to look what the predictions from 2008 were, but that's something we can definitely consider as we look into the next facility plan. And, every facility plan isn't the same. The level of effort in this one might not be what it was in 2008, because maybe the facilities that were designed and implemented in 2008 or outlined in that plan are going to be shown that they're going to work fine for the next 30 years or 20 years. So there's some of that goes to it. So it could be easier to put a plan together. Oh, yep, that's working fine. We don't have to look at that anymore. So that can certainly be part of the process too.
I see that, I believe it was like, we're using about 63% of our capacity or so. And that sounds about right, doesn't it? I noticed in this picture with the plans, we have some new things being built in the back, Is 63% about right? Or what's our target as far as, because obviously there are times when it's a lot more than that.
Yeah, that's generally, we're in a good place. What can happen is when a certain industry comes to town that might have, like a significant industrial user might have higher pollutant loads, and that could eat up a lot of that in a short period of time, depending on what industry opens up. But generally, we're in a good place right now. So, 63% is a good place.
Thank you. And, we're up there as far as the rates of Iowa cities. We're treating our waste very seriously, and we're trying to recover what we can. So we have a very high level of how we're treating our waste, which is important. And right next to, like you say, a beautiful Mississippi River, we would like to, there's so much more that we're doing. And of course, this hilly town that Mr. Jones is always talking about, nothing straight, nothing flat, and it makes it harder. You have all these lift stations that are required. So there's a lot going on with what you're doing, and thank you very much for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mm-hmm. Ms. Weffel.
I got a lot of notes. I'm not really sure where I'm going to start here, but first of all, you started out by talking about health, and this is about not just odor. This is about the health of our population, about the health of our river. You neighbor mines of Spain. People should be able to go on a hike and not have odor. I respect Mr. Jones's comments, but I will say the odor has been exceptional.
this is beyond what could be expected. The citizens of Dubuque deserve to breathe clean air. And so I feel that you have taken this very seriously. I'd also like to thank Mr. Van Milligan for the seriousness of what you have done related to this issue for my constituents. You have always listened. I have been diligent in always sharing with you up to date, and I know you shared that then with staff. I feel that our administrative team has gone above and beyond to not only figure out what the problem is, but then to address the problem and make sure transparently our citizens are well informed. And so when it comes to the pillar of transparency that we've added in the last year, you cannot get more transparent than the April 2nd health of digesters. All 4 digesters are now fully functional, exclamation point. And every time that I have received a text since we have started this updated site, I literally copy and paste it from the website to my constituent when they send it to me so that they can understand. I give them the link, but also, hey, this is the latest. This is what you're smelling, why you're smelling it. This is where we're at in the process. And so the transparency of it for our administrative team, for your staff and your leadership, thank you. Yeah. You do a lot with 17.25 FTEs. You do a lot. Yeah. And so I can appreciate that in the last 16 years, we've had a few things in technology update since our last plan. I think it's fair to say. I think I had a cell phone in 2008. So the technology that is available to us now, we need to take full advantage of it for the future and for our planning. I can't wait till we have the best program in the state, and I have confidence we're gonna have it. And we're gonna have it because we're taking this seriously about the health of our environment for the decades to come. Related to 3 of number 9, you had mentioned, I appreciate the cost of the abatement of odor is a recurring cost, but you had mentioned that there's other things that we can do. We touched on it a little bit. I'll be excited to know as we move forward throughout the year, if we can learn about, as you come up with those updates, how can we support you with them? Because if we can do more permanent fixes for this problem to avoid that amount of money every year as a recurring cost, to me, that's a no-brainer if it financially makes sense. And so I appreciate it's a big recurring cost for a good reason, but if we have ways that we can knock that number down over time, I'm anxious to learn more about it. Again, I really want to thank your team, but Mr. Van Milligan, for the seriousness of how you have taken this issue that has been brought to you by our constituents. I think your recommendations in this budget show that we value that feedback from our constituents, and we're going to do something about it to fix the problem. So thank you both.
Ms. Russell.
Thank you. I have a question on a totally different area. This is from the operations and maintenance section in the budget document. And it's talking about the biogas. And it's one of the areas where we can reduce costs if we can produce our own electricity. And I see right now we're at about 18%, but our goal is 68%. And I just wondered, how is that working? What are you working on with the biogas?
Are you referring to the production of electricity?
Yes.
Yeah. So we had a contract, a service contract with someone who was kind of helping us maintain that equipment, and that has expired. The equipment has not been working well with the other aspect of our gas process, where that private party utilizes our gas and then cleans it and then interjects into the system. Part of the issue is the system we have that creates electricity is having a hard time operating with the pressures of the gas that we're getting from the actual gas line, the domestic gas line. And so it does not operate very well. We're actually looking at options, and that's we're kind of doing pre-facility planning right now, looking at what we would do with something like that. Is it viable, or is there a different, micro turbine setup that would work better with what we have in place? If you recall, both the micro turbines and kind of the natural gas, renewed natural gas systems were added after our last facility plan, and so they just don't work real well together right now. And so as part of this new process, we're looking at, okay, what do we want to do with that as part of this facility plan? And then we would come back with those recommendations. Right now, it just does not, it only functions for a few hours and then it'll shut off, and it's just a real maintenance headache. It just is really hard to operate and function. So we definitely recognize that. And I was kind of ready for that question because it jumps out at you that we're producing a lot less electricity than we had hoped with this system.
Well, I'm glad to know that we'll be working on that in the future because it's a resource that we can utilize to reduce our costs. So thank you.
Yep.
So, thank you very much, Darren. Very useful information and great presentation. When we talk about transparency, you guys at the Water and Resource Recovery Plant, I can't think of a better example because I've learned so much more information than I ever thought I would want to know about what happens with our Water and Resource Recovery Center. And when there is an issue, and there have been issues this year, and you've actually, this presentation was extremely helpful for me to understand a little more of the context of why some of these issues exist. Time has gone by faster than I think we realized, right? We put major investments as a city into that. And now we're starting to see at the end of these many years, we need to take another look at some of those things. Right. And it involves planning. It involves making sure that we look at technology and all those different things. But the COVID thing that you mentioned, that did not register with me. That because of what happened to the supply chain during the pandemic, that companies would just stop creating and servicing the components that we bought, which didn't seem that long ago, and now has created a serious issue for us. Right. And one of the themes that I pulled from your presentation tonight is just the confluence of events that came together to create the challenges that we currently sit with right now. And there have been a number of challenges. And every time there's been a challenge, you have come here and stood in front of us, and Willie's come and stood in front of us and said, all right, here's what we know. This is the data we're gathering. This is the information that we're getting. And now we need to do these things. We're going to give this a try and go in this direction. And we're going to try to do these things. And by the way, we're going to be coming to you asking for some improvements because this stuff costs money. Right. It's a challenge to do. I have one question for you. Is there anything we should be doing faster, that we can do faster than what we're doing right now?
Well, when I talk with the team, it's baby steps. It's one step at a time. I think we want to make sure we move forward with our planning and make sure what we do is strategic. And so I don't know if there's anything we can do faster. I think we just want to make sure we're moving forward strategic, I guess would be my...
Yeah. And you tell me if this is accurate and when I say it, because when you say that, we want to move carefully, we want to move strategically, right? I think some people sometimes hear more planning, more talking, more meetings, just government working really slow, right? But aren't we talking about chemistry here?
That's definitely part of it. The health of the digesters, when they're ailing, there's really nothing, there's not much you can do. We did do some things that we think made a difference. Same time, it's biology, it's living organisms inside a tank that you can't see inside of it, and you just have to read, like you said, do the chemical analysis and the chemistry to kind of measure the health. It's like taking the blood pressure of it. What are the acid levels? What's the alkalinity? What's the methane production? So there's certain things you can't rush. You just have to.
There's basically two different tracks that we're on here. There's the natural speed of the natural world that we live in. We can't speed that up, no matter how much we try. We'd love to, but we can't do it. It's just, it is what it is. It is going to be this fast. We have to live with nature and how that works. But the other track is the human side of it. And that's the piece we can control. What I hear from you in the last year and what I see in this budget is us doing everything we possibly can to move as fast as we can and control the things that we can control. And I do appreciate the patience of the community because when things stink, it's hard to concentrate. It's hard to do anything, right? You can't go for those hikes you want to go because the hikes you want to go for are right next door to you guys. And these are challenges. But with that said, we can't do these things unless we invest in them. And this is what investment looks like. We have to be able to invest in this way, and we do it on a calendar year. We can't just start throwing money at problems in the middle of a year. That's terrible government. It's terrible business, by the way, too. Right. And you probably shouldn't do it with your own checkbook. But what you really want to try to do is come up with real solutions that are going to be lasting and are going to actually fix the problem. And unfortunately, that takes some time, and it takes a budgeting process, but we're getting there. And I really appreciate that we're getting there. And I have to echo the same thanks that I've heard from several of you that you've got 9 improvement packages that you've requested. Every single one of those is recommended because we recognize that this is something that's really important. And it's one of those places where we have to invest in a pretty expensive thing to get something done and make it much better. So thank you for the work that you continue to do. I know we're going to see you again. I know that you're going to continue to post those updates because you've been very consistent as a department in doing this. And when I say you, Darren, I mean everybody at the Water and Resource Recovery Center. You guys are doing a great job. It's been challenging, and you're working your way through the challenges. So thank you for that. And thank you for your continued communication with the community. I think that's one of the things that is most helpful in this, is that when people have concerns and they reach out to one of us or they reach out to you directly, they get an answer. And thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right. With that, we will move on. Thank you very much, Darren, to our final presentation of the evening, which is the Planning Department.
Wally, you used up all your time, so
I know. I'm like, you saved the best for last? Is that what I heard? No.
Oh.
They're like, shut up, Wally, and just get it done with. That's right. You stretch your dollar, then some.
Like a true city manager there, Mike.
That was great.
All right, Wally, we are still all here. Just going to be walking around a little bit.
Oh, I didn't know if you were taking a break.
No, we're good.
Oh, okay.
No, we're ready when you are. So are you ready to roll?
Oh, yeah, I'm ready to roll.
Okay, let's do it. We are ready for the Planning Department budget presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Wally Wernmock, Planning Services Director. We're going to go through the fiscal year 2025 budget presentation for the Planning Services Department. So our mission statement is the Planning Services Department is to provide friendly, knowledgeable, and professional city planning, historic preservation, and development services to ensure a viable, livable, and equitable Dubuque. Our office is made up of 8.38 full-time equivalents. This is kind of our organization chart. And we'll go through with a lot of these staff individuals what they get involved with. But the major activities we get involved with is development services, city planning, and historic preservation. We have multiple planners in our department. We have a zoning enforcement officer, planning technician, and administrative assistants. Here's actually a photo of my department. This was City Hall Selfie Day. So we had a competition. We went out in front of City Hall, the departments in City Hall, so we were able to snap a photo. The amazing thing about this photo is Kate Getz, who's our planning intern, using her AI ability, photoshopped herself into that photo. She's the one with the glasses and the hat, and I didn't realize she did that. She took it, put it on the front of our City Hall office, and she's like, I said, how did she get in there? It's like she photoshopped herself in there. So that's just great. So in our office, we have, besides myself, Sheena Moon. She's our associate planner. We have 3 assistant planners, Travis Schrobelgen, Jason Duba, Chris Happ Olson. Charlie Miller's our zoning enforcement officer. Matt O'Brien is our planning technician. Renee Blosch is our administrative assistant. And as mentioned before, Kate Getz is our planning intern. The Planning Services Department is augmented by the outstanding work of 4 boards and commissions led by the following dedicated volunteers shown here. For all of our 28 members of the board and commissions who are staffed by the Planning Services Department, I would like to say thank you. I cannot say it enough. I'd like to take a moment and stress the need for board and commission members, not only for the Planning Services Department, but for all city departments. And without you, we cannot approve a rezoning of a property. We cannot approve a conditional use permit for daycare. Without you, we cannot recommend urban renewal and revitalization district plans that help create economic job growth and affordable housing projects, or create a comprehensive plan to help guide our community. Without you, we cannot help to protect our architectural and historic resources that make Dubuque so unique. Thank you, thank you, thank you. One of the best ways to learn about our city government and make a difference in people's lives is serving on the boards and commissions. Many current and previous council members, right, and city employees started out their service on the community, to the community on these boards and commissions. And I say thank you to all those who are serving, who have served, and say welcome to all future board and commission members. We cannot do it without you. So, as I mentioned before, we have our Zoning Board of Adjustment, our Zoning Advisory Commission. We have a vacant position, a shameless plug for the Zoning Advisory Commission. We also have our Historic Preservation Commission and our Long Range Planning Advisory Commission. And we'll go into those different activities, what those boards and commissions do, but we have a vacant position in our Historic Preservation Commission. So there are opportunities out there in our Long Range Planning Advisory Commission as well. So we would love to have you. We're a fun group to hang out with, planning services staff that helps assist you and help guide you as you work with the city council and making major decisions for our community. We'd also like to say thank you to these members. They've just recently either stepped away from the board, they actually may have moved out of our community, with John McAndrews, who served 8 years on the Historic Preservation Commission. Alex Gustafson, 2 years. He actually relocated to another community. Long Range Planning Advisory Commission, Alan Vinson, 15 years. 15 years. Getting paid very well for his position. But he was a dedicated individual. We hate to see him go, working for the Long Range Planning Advisory Commission. Amy U. Daly, cross-board person. She was working with the Housing Commission, and she crossed over and worked with us on our Long Range Planning Advisory Commission. Becky Kemp served us 3 years at our Zoning Advisory Commission. Ryan Senf, a young individual who worked for the chamber, who was working with us as the Zoning Advisory Commission. He actually moved out of the city to a different location. And then Bethany Golembeski, 8 years with our Zoning Board of Adjustment. Those are a lot of years and dedication, and I'd like to thank those members who are serving and have served on our communities, our boards and commissions. But not only do we get involved with boards and commissions, we get involved with design review committees. So we actually have the Port of Dubuque Design Review Committee and the Chaplain Schmidt Island Design Review Committee. And these committees are made up of property owners in those planned unit developments or those very specific design areas of our community. The Millwork District is another one that's similar to a design review committee, but city staff work on these committees. In addition to those property owners, we review everything from the new casino hotel that's going to be going up to the amphitheater to the merged development located in the Port of Dubuque, and any other improvements are located in those 2 areas. Creating an equitable community of choice. The Planning Services Department has an equity plan. We also get involved with equitable fines and fees. There's a lot of things as I move through this presentation where I'll point up that equities being involved, specifically with our day-to-day activities that we get involved with equity. Fiscal year 2024 highlights. Our Imagine Dubuque Comprehensive Plan, we were successful in the achievement implementation. Corey Burbach helped out a lot with that. Jason Duba in my office is working with the Achieve It implementation. That's also the same software you guys are seeing for your city council goals and priorities. It's such an important tool that we have. It allows us to cross-correlate in the future the comp plan, city goals, and multiple plans that will be eventually implemented into that software. And then also we have a partnership with the University of Dubuque. We had one of the Imagine Dubuque Comprehensive Plan goals was not moving forward. It was air sensors and monitoring. We were able to partner with a class at the University of Dubuque to purchase some air sensors to help them to do some of that monitoring, and they'll be providing some feedback and information back to the city on that. Safe Routes to School Committee. Jason Duba is an avid biker. He's actually a transportation planner by trade. He's one of my assistant planners. He actually took this on as one of his goals that he'd like to see forward in our department. So he actually worked on the Safe Routes to School. He got the public school system, the private school system, the county, and even the state Safe Routes to School committee together to start really talking about biking, walking to our schools throughout our community. Certified Local Government Grant we're working on with our Volker Highlands and Deerville neighborhood surveys. We're going to talk about Developers Roundtable and Development Review Team improvements, and then also increase housing units, which are new construction and rehabilitation. Future initiatives, historic structural report, Eagle Point Park. We've had this great opportunity to take advantage of a Jeffers Foundation grant and take some funding that the city has and use it as a match in order to do a detailed structural report of the Eagle Point Park pavilions to get that information. And out of that, we'll have an opportunity to apply for actual bricks and mortars funds from that Jeffers Foundation. We're working on a partnership with the Dubuque Heritage Foundation on that. We'll continue to work on bike lane and trail development. Unified Development Code, you just approved our RFP at the last City Council meeting. That's actually out. We're getting great interest in that as that comes before us. We're going to update our existing and future land use map. We're going to continue to implement the Imagine Dubuque Comprehensive Plan. And we're working on a State Historic Preservation Office program by agreement. So the expertise of our historic preservation staff in our office has the ability to do historical reviews instead of having to send those always on to the State Historic Preservation Office for federally funded programs, which helps speed up the process for like lead grant reviews and homeowner rehabs. Requested property tax support, we cost the average homeowner $4.35. One of the main activities, like I mentioned, is city planning. We provide staff support to the Long Range Planning Advisory Commission. We help engage the community and develop partnerships and implement the Imagine Dubuque plan. We have an annexation study that's what we're working on, and in fiscal year 2023, we had 3 annexations that totaled 26 acres. That Long Range Planning Advisory Commission works on development and implementation and amendments to our comprehensive plan. They review and provide recommendations to City Council on new urban revitalization districts. Those are the districts that you hear about where they get tax abatements. New urban renewal district, which is tax increment financing. They also undertake specific long-range planning projects like what I mentioned, the updating the existing and future land use maps. And then we also have our vacant and developable land inventory so we can help market our own community to developers from the outside. We continue to work on Imagine Dubuque implementation. We're using the collective impact model. The Planning Service Department is the backbone organization. We work on planning activation. We're trying to identify some of those goals that are not moving forward and help identify key individuals who can help us move forward some of those recommendations. And we do that progress reporting and achieve it. So just kind of go over that Imagine Dubuque implementation. We have connectors, which are typically the city department managers who then work with city leadership teams and community partners throughout the community, and then who also works with individuals and city staff and community partners. So it's just not the city moving forward some of these goals and recommendations. The city cannot move certain ones. We have to have the community to work with us, and this is an entire implementation process that we get involved with, that our planning department's the backbone, and we're actually the pushers. So we got to remind some of these individuals and help assist us and help identify who can help move forward those recommendations. And we have 7 plan categories, which leads to 32 plan subcategories and 110 plan recommendations. So our development services activity, we get involved with fostering partnerships and provide efficient, knowledgeable, and coordination of sustainable development. We provide staff support to our Zoning Board of Adjustment and Zoning Advisory Commission, and we facilitate and coordinate the development review team. Here's a couple photos of the Simmons Warehouse and the Collins Community Credit Union, which were both reviewed and approved in fiscal year 2023. Well, let's talk a little bit more about the development review team, like you haven't heard me ever talk about the development review team before, right? So here's an icon or a logo that we provided. The Planning Services Department is the main facilitator of that development review team. We work with 5 core departments. Those are outlined in the blue: the Engineering Department, Water Department, Construction Inspections, and Construction Services, and the Fire Department. Then we have other departments that participate as needed, which is the Leisure Services Department, Economic Development, the City Manager's Office, and Public Works. And we actually invite the private utilities to attend our Development Review Team meetings. So we have an individual from Black Hills Energy that attends every meeting. And then we reach out to Line Energy, and the fiber network providers also get copies of all the information. So they're aware of the projects that are coming through. And then also the Greater Dubuque Development Corporation are also attending our Development Review Team meetings. We meet every week, typically on Thursdays, 10 to 12. However, in fiscal year 2023, we had 36 DRT meetings. And in those 36 meetings, we had 54 cases. 18 of them were concept reviews. We reviewed subdivision plats and site plans. So this is a chart that kind of shows the square footage of approved development, and this is only new or expanded commercial, industrial, and institutional development. This is non-residential construction, which I'll get to in a little bit here. But these numbers just kind of show those larger developments and some of the smaller developments that we review and approve throughout the year. And in fiscal year 2023, some of those numbers of that 500,000 you see are square footages for James Martin's Jewelers, the Collins Community Credit Union. There's a commercial building on Boulder Brook Court. Geisler's Brothers had an addition. Mediacom built a brand new building. Aldi's built a new building. And like I mentioned, Simmons Warehouse. And there's probably about 20 other properties that we reviewed and approved that are included in that number. And we take that average over the 5 years. So you can see development is growing, especially from fiscal year 2029, and we continue to see that growing as we move forward. Residential approvals in fiscal year 2023, we had several. Some of these I'm just highlighting is the Fox Hills Apartments. That's a major site plan that we reviewed. We went through a rezoning on that property. They're looking to actually break ground this April. The Kretschmer Lofts, which is an adaptive reuse of a historic millwork district building in our millwork district, and then a major subdivision with the farm subdivision located out off the Northwest Arterial. So at this time, I'd like to hand out our housing creation brochure to Corey. Yep. So as those goes around, we're just going to talk about all of the great things that are happening in Dubuque because of incentives that were approved by this council. As of March 29th, 2024, we have about 2,335 lots or units that are proposed either during the review process. They've either been approved and waiting construction, they're either under construction, or they actually have been completed. This is very important as we grow in our community. We need more housing for our residents. This provides a breakdown of the lots, what are affordable units, what are market rating units, single-family development, everything from projects that have been approved and quite a few other ones that are under construction, also including the Estates of Dubuque's development out there with 35 units, which I believe almost all the buildings are constructed at this time. There's some interior work that still needs to be completed on some of those units located through that. So you'll be getting a routine update of these numbers. This is a great brochure, as you see. It's beautifully put together by one Randy Gale's office. So that's one of the things that you guys probably hear from him. He helps assist us make these pretty handouts for you guys. So the other thing that happened in fiscal year 2023 is the Developers Roundtable. So we reintroduced the Developers Roundtable to allow discussion of city development policy and processes between city staff and those in the development community. Planning staff worked with the Greater Dubuque Development Corporation. We held several roundtable sessions, 3 of them, and then we also had a larger public engagement session, which the City Council was invited to attend. But then also the planning services staff surveyed architects, engineers, land surveyors who submit those site plans and subdivision plats that are part of our development review team process. We held a 3-hour work session to gather feedback and how we can improve our process. And as a result of a lot of those meetings that we've had, we've implemented some policy changes. Some will include private roads. So we had a policy that if it was a commercial road and it didn't provide any access or any connection to a residential, those would remain private. We're accepting those as public streets now. Placement of water lines used to be just required to be in the street right away. underneath the street, and now they can be located behind back a curb based on our SUDAS requirements. And then the big discussion between the use of PVC versus ductile iron pipe for water mains. So those are just 3 things that were implemented. We're still discussing with the Developers Roundtable and still moving forward on many of the other actionable items that they've discussed. One is primarily that Unified Development Code, which we will be interacting with the Developers Roundtable. And then within the next month, we'll actually have another work session with the Developers Roundtable to kind of talk about the budgeting process the City Council goes through, just to help inform individuals. How does the budget work? How do you get information to the City Council for future budgets? Because that was kind of one of the things that was identified in our Developers Roundtable to help inform some of those individuals. The Zoning Advisory Commission is part of the Development Services activity. This is where you see me a lot, standing before you at the City Council meetings. When we do these breakdowns of all these cases, we also identify what are located in our Community Development Block Group eligible districts, in addition to the past 5 years. So in fiscal year 2023, we had 37 cases, and those ranged from plats to planned unit developments, rezonings, text amendments, and site plan waivers. Same thing with the Zoning Board of Adjustment. You do not see those cases. Zoning Board of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial board. They get their powers delegated to them from the state of Iowa. Their decisions are final. Their decisions would have to be appealed to district court. But with regards to that Zoning Board of Adjustment, they had 42 Zoning Board of Adjustment cases, with the majority of those being special exceptions. Special exceptions are residential variances, where people are basically, I just want to build a deck closer to a property, I want to build a little bit bigger garage, I want to add more units to my property, I want to cover more of my lot with structure. So anywhere we can work with those individuals to make that happen and have them have an owner occupied, live in their unit or a rental property, we definitely assist those. And you'll see when we look at the Community Development Block Grant eligible cases, some of those, probably a half to a little more than a third are located in those CDBG eligible areas. And as we talk about planning fees, we actually keep that fee a little bit lower than actual what the price of service is for that. Because a lot of times those individuals are in those lower incomes, and sometimes an application fee may be a barrier, and we do not want to encourage that. We want to see them make the investment in their community so they can stay. Zoning Enforcement Officer Charlie Miller is a very busy individual. In fiscal year 2023, we had 358 zoning enforcement cases that were everything from a zoning issue, which may be like an illegal home occupation, to inoperable vehicles, to improper vehicle storage throughout our community. And once again, we break that down by CDBG eligible districts, and then also a 5-year average between those two. Historic preservation is the other activity in our office. We provide staff to the Historic Preservation Commission. We continue to conduct research on planning and preservation projects. We apply for grants and policies. We update ordinances. And we facilitate the Section 106 process with the state of Iowa for the housing rehabilitation projects citywide. These are some photos of before and afters of some of our Ken Kringle Award winners. One of the large undertakings that we've been involved with is our Black Heritage Survey. We received a Historic Resource Development Program grant with a match from our CIP budget that we received for technical assistance. This is just kind of give you some information on where we're at with that Heritage Survey. We did give you a City Council work session update, but since then we've had 20 outreach events, meetings, and interviews in fiscal year 2023. Chris Olson has presented at statewide and regional conferences. We're actually will be going to the National Association of Preservation Conferences to present in July on the Black Heritage Survey. And we continue to outreach to city staff, leadership team, nonprofits. We have, the plan is actually at the State Historic Preservation Office. They're reviewing it. They're providing more information to us. And we're continuing to work on this very important document. We want to make sure we get it right because it's one of the first in the state of Iowa, and it'll probably be one of the standards to help move forward with other communities. So we're very proud of the survey that we're working through, and we have a lot of engagement involved with it. We continue to do evaluation and protection of our historic resources. We survey architectural and archaeological resources. We've surveyed over 6,000 of those. We protected over 2,000. And there's been $9.1 million of investment in our historic and downtown neighborhoods in fiscal year 2023. Our historic review by our Historic Preservation Commission and city staff Here's the breakdown and the location in our community. Quite a few of those are those Section 106 reviews we talk about, where the staff does a lot of the historical research of the property. We work with our housing department, provide a lot of documentation, and send it off to the State Historic Preservation Office with a programmatic agreement that will allow us to do all that in-house, and then we don't have to send off certain ones to the State Historic Preservation in hopes of reviewing funding at a quicker to have rehabs happen in a shorter period of time. Certificate of appropriateness we go for our Historic Preservation Commission. We have staff approvals, demolition reviews, and facade grants that we help review on behalf of the Economic Development Department. We actually do a customer service survey because we want to know how we're doing. So after all of our board and commissions, we send out a survey electronically. Not everyone sends them back. But we did get 16 survey responses, and then we report on those annually to you on how we're doing in our department. And these are just some of the comments that we receive from various individuals that take the time to fill out those surveys and provide that back to our office. And it's always great to see some of these comments, especially for the staff that's working in our office. So that's about us talking about how we help people in the community. Now, we actually are not only an outward-facing department, we're definitely an inward-facing department. So we not only provide assistance to our residents and our citizens and our property owners and our developers, but we also work with all our other departments inside our city organization. We do a lot of analysis, a lot of studying, statistics. We answer questions. I mean, there's just quite a few things that we get involved with other departments. So when you guys come meet with me and I do my one-on-one with you get hired, I say we get our fingers in everyone's business. Well, that's true. So there's just not a lot that we do not get involved with the city organization. Our recommended improvement requests that are approved, laptop. So we currently have one laptop. We need 2 laptops because we're doing a lot of virtual meetings, a lot of opportunities where we're presenting in multiple locations throughout the community, and then also opportunities for people to use them when they're on conferences, and we've had issues where we need an additional laptop. So that is a request that's being requested to be approved. Software licenses include some building plan review software licensing through our department, and then the housing department and inspections and constructions division has asked also for some of that funding as well. We also have City of Dubuque shirts because we have Charlie's out in the community. We like to be him clearly identified as a city official and when he's out doing inspections. But then not only that, we have staff that are giving presentations to the public. We do present at City Life. We do go out and sit in audiences and listen to presentations of all different various organizations. We just want to be clearly identified as a city official and be able to help reach out to those individuals. And then also another improvement request is our planning fee increase. We do have one CIP, that's our Historic Preservation Technical Assistant Program. And this is our seed money that we can use to apply for grants. So we use this money to apply for a larger grant for a certified local government grant or a historic resource development program grant or some other funding source. And that money, we just use a little bit and it goes a long ways. We have our fiscal year 2025 fee increase. That's going to be additional recurring revenue of $1,380 a year. The last time we raised the fees was last year. And so our fees are actually adjusted based on the cost of service. And then when we talk about equitable fines and fees, we talk about special exceptions. Those are the fees where we keep that fee low because those are impacting more of our lower moderate income individuals throughout our community. Performance measures, we do track the average days of review and approval for our zoning board of adjustment. Our application deadlines to the City Council for Zoning Advisory Commission, 55 average days is crazy when you look at other communities in the state of Iowa. I have been tasked to research that to prove my point. A lot of times when we have developers that come into our community, it's unbelievable how fast we can turn around an approval for rezoning or an application, and they're very, very thankful for that. And in addition to that, we have 1,714 inspections conducted to bring properties in compliance. So that's Charlie Miller going out and doing his enforcement. So you saw he has 358 inspections, but he has to go out to that site maybe 2 or 3 times. A lot of times what we're trying to do is to educate and seek compliance as opposed to just going and finding someone who may not be aware that they're in violation of the code. We give them an opportunity to correct the violation, give them a certain period of time. Charlie has this great ability to work with individuals to bring them into compliance. And then if we get to that point, we have to take them through to the court process, we will. But this is just a process that we do because we don't want to fine individuals who may not be able to pay the fee, and that kind of defeats the purpose. So let's work with them to seek compliance. Another performance measure in city planning is our Imagine Dubuque. We track that through the Achieve It process. We have 90% of our recommendations are on track. And then we also track the average days of the historic preservation review, and then also the number of millions of dollars of investment in our historic and downtown neighborhoods. So I'd like to thank you, city council members, city manager, assistant city manager, city clerk, for you guys' continued support. I also like to thank the community as a whole to help support our department as we move forward and continue to make Dubuque a great place to live. So I'm ready to take on some questions.
All right, well, thank you very much, Wally. We are in a public hearing to discuss the Planning Department fiscal year 25 budget. Do we have any public input on this? I see none here. Do we have any virtual input? Thank you. Anything from the city clerk's office? All right. I'm going to start differently this time and actually say something first. I might have questions after everybody else gets a chance to go, but I think there's something that needs to be said after the presentation that you gave here. And I don't know, I lost count. I think it was 2 bajillion times that you stood in front of us this year to talk to us about various different things. At one point during this year, there was a pretty long discussion in the community about development and the city's role in it. And, this discussion was I think, months long and lots of different bits and pieces to it. And in a way, Wally, I think you and your staff in your department became a bit of a punching bag in this entire discussion. And I think that's really unfortunate because, when I look at this presentation that you just gave here, and I look at the evidence that we've seen over months of talking about how development works in the city of Dubuque and what development looks like in the city of Dubuque, what has become incredibly obvious to me is that the dramatic claims of how terrible things are in the city, and especially in your department and some other departments that have to do with development, were just absolutely not true. I think they were either erroneous. I don't think people necessarily were trying to make things not true, but they were just wrong. The dramatic claims of how inefficient we are and how ineffective development is, I just haven't seen any really good evidence of it. We did probably learn that we needed to, I just didn't say probably. We did learn we needed to do some things differently, and we did them. I was really impressed by how fast we did them. I was impressed by the fact that we found out there were some changes that were needed, and there were multiple different developers and people in business who wanted those changes, and we made some of those changes. You mentioned a few of them. For instance, where folks can place utilities in new developments, for example. That was one of those great examples. But I think it's really important to point this out. And I think it's important to continue to point it out. Currently, we're pointing it out to an empty room, but I know that we're recorded, so there are a lot of people that potentially are watching or could watch this. And I think it's important to be able to say that when you gather data and it says that 100% of the people you gathered that data from said you were friendly, and 100% said that you adequately informed applicants of the process, and 94% of the people you got that data from said that you were timely, and that our turnaround time is shorter than most other cities in the state of Iowa. These are really important points when it comes to development. And you had some other great data on here too, and I'm sure we'll talk about some of it, so I'll let it go to questions and discussion at this point. But I think it was important to point this out because you've done really good work this year. And you personally, Wally, have stayed very calm and collected throughout this process, and I really appreciate that about you. I just want to point that out very specifically. I think you listened, and you were very respectful and civil in those discussions to say, what can we improve, and how can we do that? And you did that. Mike, as a city manager, you did that. I think a lot of us as city council members did that, and I think a lot of other staff did that too. So I'm glad that we're turning over a new leaf on this discussion and we're moving forward. And I hope that people across the community can recognize that some of the claims that were made were not true. And then some of the claims that were made that were true were fixed pretty quickly. And we've seen nothing but improvement ever since. I mean, the number of times the development review team is meeting, the number of ways you reach out to people in the community, we're doing it right. And from all that I can see on the presentation we just got here, we're going to keep doing it right. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
So yeah, Ms. Farber.
Could you pull up slide 33?
Yeah.
Please. Thank you. So I just want to reinforce and to use your words about being outward and inward facing, that this slide really shows what you do, how you do it, and how all-encompassing it is. And it's just, to me, you are the linchpin for all that happens within these departments. So I wanted to just give you a big shout out to you and your staff, and thank you very much for that, because this really says it all, I think, this slide. I do have a question, since we were talking about reintroducing the roundtable.
Yes.
And I know that you had met several times last year, and we had actually had a session on it. What is the schedule going forward? Because I know you have your development meetings, but in terms of the roundtable where you can get small businesses to meet with you in group sessions, what does that look like now going forward?
Yeah, so we'll have an upcoming larger group session with the Developers Roundtable, a public session that we're working with the Greater Dubuque Development Corporation. That'll happen in the next month. But the other thing that we talked about is the Unified Development Code, right? So one of the things we heard from the Developers Roundtable is city just not making decisions on policy decisions without including them. So I think the major key thing is that we continue to communicate with the developers so they're aware of changes, to take their advice and their input, which we do constantly. And then also the ability for us to continue to move forward. So there'll be regular meetings throughout the year. We're looking at approximately, we've had conversations about 3 times a year, but it'll be as needed because there'll be topics that'll come up, we'll have a greater discussion. Our Unified Development Code update, we have a session actually worked with whoever we select as a consultant, sit down with the Developers Roundtable and have conversations as we look forward to making some improvements to that code that may help facilitate development.
So is there still a hearty response from the business community to join these roundtable sessions?
Well, I'm sorry, what was that?
So there's still an active group that enjoys sitting down with you to have these conversations at the roundtable?
So at the roundtable, yes, with those, we had those larger group discussions, and we continue to grow, provide information as we move forward too. In the past, the Developers Roundtable was about 20 years ago. We started that. There's always a lot of discussion up front. Like, everyone's super excited, and as we continue to meet, some of those developers fall off after a while, and we get a smaller group. Our hope is that that doesn't happen, that we have the ability to be more approachable. So if anyone has any questions, usually what happens is I have a developer just contact me directly and have a conversation instead of going through the Developers Roundtable. We have some developers that are very good about that. If they have a question, say, hey, Wally, we're talking about this, what can we do? And then we bring in the appropriate departments. We consult with the city manager when we need to on certain situations. So a lot of that dialogue happens that people just, it's not in a formal setting where it's just like one large meeting where we get everyone together. So.
Well, I appreciate the fact that those are continuing. And I noticed that one of your requests for packages was funding for more rooms for these group meetings. Since that was delayed until next year or future, where are you meeting now? I'm just
We're going
curious.
to continue to, so we've moved down to the Jewel Operations Training Center. And we're being able to locate some additional funding here and there as we can find in order to help cover some of those room costs, because we do have to pay a room fee. It is a city facility, but it is funded by federal transit dollars, so there is a cost that we have to pay that goes into another department's budget. It's a minimal fee, but that's kind of pay as you go, right? Like I said, we have 52 weeks in a year. We met 36 times. It just really depends on what we have. So at the end of the year, I think we might be able to find, it was like $1,300, I think it was. We might be able to find that at the end of the year to make sure we cover
it up. And then one more question. Are you fully staffed? You have 8.38
As of this
team members? Do you need more staff with everything that your team does? And I, again, am looking at this chart that's on the screen here.
We are fully staffed, finally. I've been in this position since May of 2019, and we finally have a full staff as of August. I think every department needs additional staff, but knowing the current budget and climate, I wasn't going to ask for it. So I think there's an opportunity in the future for us to ask for additional staff as we move forward. But with regards to the amount of development that we're seeing, and we're getting more and more and more, expanding of some of the development services staff to help assist with timeliness, which we hope doesn't become an issue. We are hopeful with the electric plan review software that the housing department is working on for the building permits, and then we're using that to help implement electronic tracking. Will help assist with some of the chasing of emails and tracking and doing certain information, that technology that you keep talking about, Susan, that AI, let's help us out. So let's take some of our workload off.
I'm taking notes as you're
Especially,
talking.
we use GIS every day, where in the past, you used to have to go down to the courthouse to find everyone within 200 feet. They'd have to physically talk to the recorder's office. Now it's 2 clicks on a button. We provide that information, make mail merges, and send that information off. So if technology comes through, we reevaluate to see if we need to expand that staff. So.
Well, thank you very much. And again, thank you for being the linchpin for us all. Appreciate it very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Mr. Sell.
Thank you. Wally, I'd like to kind of expand on something that you said earlier, which was to invite citizens to be involved in it. I think it's really special how much citizen engagement is key to your operations. And as a former zoning commissioner, I would just like to let people know how well your staff takes these difficult and sometimes difficult topics that you might not be familiar with as a commissioner, and you take that information and make it understandable for the citizens that participate in those commissions. So I just want to thank you for the skill that you use in educating people so that they can be an important part of the process. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I miss you on that commission, by the way.
Yeah, Ms. Wethel.
I just want to tell you that I blame you for my long-windedness, and let me explain. So when I first started as a city councilwoman, I had the opportunity to meet with each individual department, and I asked of every department lead if, as a city council member starting out, you could make one recommendation of what you would like me to do in my role for you. You said, I think you said always read the staff memo, which I do that. But you also said, if you're going to vote, especially for something, if you're going to vote against something, please tell me why. Explain why you vote a certain way and give us feedback. And that's the least I can do, because your department goes above and beyond every time. It's unbelievable, the knowledge and the caliber of your staff, of you personally. I just really appreciate it. Mayor Kavanaugh had touched on some of the discourse that has been had in our community in the last year. I would just like you to know that although those are some loud voices that have been broadcast in the last year, I had many voices that would take me aside in public events and sometimes almost whispering in my ear, please know that's not how all of us feel. And many times it was specifically to compliment you and your team on how you enact your role, how easy you are to communicate with, how accessible you are universally from project to project. And I'm talking about people who do projects all across this country. So please know that I haven't let those loud voices take me over in the way that I practice in my role, and I hope that you don't either, because there's a whole lot of folks that think you do a great job.
I know. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Jones.
I'd echo that. I was concerned when your predecessor was leaving the position because she brought so much integrity and character to it. But somehow the character and integrity stayed, and that's because you also brought it. And it's rubbed off in that entire department. And I didn't quite understand the concerns of the group of citizens that were complaining earlier this year, because it didn't echo my experience with planning services as a citizen. Certainly didn't echo my experience of sitting up here watching what had occurred. And I had many people whispering in my ears, hey, wait a minute, I do this every day all over the place. It's going pretty good for me. And the bumps that we found in it, we fixed. But I think we could have fixed them just as easily if they would have come to you and said, hey, Wally, can we make this work better? Instead of all of us having to read it in the paper. Anyhow, my hat's off to all of your department. You've got some exceptional people that have an exceptional set of ethics that they take to work with them every day. And they bring character and integrity to all of their work, and I appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Spring.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Wally, I had the chance the other day to talk to a former business owner who decided they came to you maybe 2 years ago with the thought of how they wanted to redevelop their land. And he said that he was very appreciative of how you literally walked him through the entire process. And that's sometimes things that I don't think some people realize. It is a process. We all want it to happen overnight and instantly, but it takes a little bit of time. And he was very appreciative of how you walked him through the entire process of what he wanted to do. He also realized he had to spend a little money to do that. Unfortunately, it wasn't the direction he decided to go, but it led him down a different path that he's very happy with that's going to be happening. So thank you for that.
Thanks.
Well, the only other thing I'll add, Wally, is a question, I guess, just real quick question. Number 20, slide number 20.
Okay.
It's the one that is about the commercial development. So that's just commercial?
That's just
commercial, industrial, and institutional. It's
new
non-residential.
expanded commercial, industrial, and institutional. Yes.
Okay.
So we have about 20 projects, and that's just fiscal year 2023 that has gone through the development review team process. So there's a lot of development that's happening right now that's getting built that was fiscal year 2024 that'll be reported on next year, but that is just fiscal year 2023 for that. That doesn't include all the residential square footage that's involved with that. So
Well, and so fiscal year 2020 started before the pandemic hit, and I mean, I guess I'm really surprised by these numbers because I didn't think it was this good. I didn't think we had this much development happening during the whole time of the pandemic. It felt kind of like we had a lot of development going, but now you can see it on the page.
it's odd, right? You think COVID's going to hit, and you think that the numbers are going to drop.
Yeah.
It allowed a lot of opportunity for those organizations when they were closed to make improvements. And you would think price of materials up, interest rates are up. You would think it would do the exact opposite. It's been steady and it keeps growing. It's amazing, to be honest with you.
Well, thanks to you, and thanks to you and your entire department, everybody who works on this, but also thank you to the people who continue to develop in Dubuque in this way and continue to work with you. I mean, it's a process. We talk about partnerships a lot, and that partnership means a lot when it's how do we get this done together? And we've heard you guys walking them through that, but then also it's the fact that people want to continue to come here and develop in this place. And I'm very, very thankful for that. And very, very thankful that we continue to find ways to improve on that process. It's what I'm hearing from you right now is that we are continuing to look on ways to improve. Well, I know it saddens us, but that brings us to the end of our evening together. We have one more budget hearing evening tomorrow night, and then we are going to have our final public hearing on this budget next Monday, April 15th. So I just want to make sure that everyone knows that. There being no further business, we will be adjourned. Thank you all.